said, I came through and playing this rock side to side. And like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got up, and, you know, especially since we bumped for 30 minutes on clear sessions, it wasn't too bad. We did that, and we've been doing some weekend trips and stuff.
Well, what it did is my
Somebody's all last weekend.
my
My
commitment
wife's
didn't
going to
start
Red
until
Bear
last
Lakes this
summer.
weekend with some of her friends.
So I had a 5-year commitment started.
Some, yeah. No,
I got to do all that.
you come into the town winter park, there's like the first stoplight, and there's a bunch of restaurants and stuff, back on State Road. You take a left right there, there's some really good trails that are non-resort trails. It's nice to make the trail. Yeah. Well, I've done a lot on the resort itself, and then through the Bonneview neighborhood is kind of, there's an old ski area that was called Idlewild. It's been shut down for 50 years. There's a bunch of trails through there. I've ridden all those, and a lot of the backcountry stuff, but I'd never ridden in that area. So we rode up there Friday night, or Saturday, played around the golf, came back to the
So yeah.
seems like around that time of the day.
I know him. I was in yeah, he's an underground guy.
Right.
Yeah.
The days are longer and you have to do more stuff.
Oh, yeah. You know, I'll have
Yeah, right. I got one that's about to be 8 and one that's 5. So, yeah, I just came from kindergarten meetup.
Is this your first meeting?
Straight to here and
I'm
then
Patrick.
home and then get up at 5:30, probably work on it. Howdy. The one?
Yeah, and we are working with that already.
All right, we've got a good chunk of people here. I think we still should have at least one, maybe two more people coming in. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Just want to go ahead and introduce yourselves for the camera. Ken Lish, Chair.
Ryan Welch.
Matt Morris.
Tricia Dunham, Vice Chair.
Oh, I wasn't.
Joel White.
Sandy Pennington, Trustee Liaison.
I'm Patrick Hammer, I'm the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Director.
Oh, cool.
All right, and there's no public, so no public comment. Our first agenda item is a presentation from Patrick on the Superior Town Center Parks 1 and 2. Patrick, kick it to you.
Are you gonna have the full, do we have somebody coming late? Do you want?
We were supposed to have we're missing one person. So yeah, yep. So Sean's supposed to be here.
We could, I'll throw it out there if we want to do initial trail discussion.
We can-
If we want to have as many committee members as available.
We can do trails first. That's
Will that?
yeah, because we need to vote on that as
Yeah,
well
'cause
anyway.
if we're gonna do kind
Yeah.
of a motion and a recommendation, I'd
Let-
like to capture as many thoughts and opinions.
Let's go ahead and do that. So Patrick's going to pull up what ProStack recommended to the board, but just some background. We had talked at our last meeting. We put forth a series of trails in the order that we wanted built for the 5-year trail plan. I met with Peter Bottomley, the chair of ProStack. We kind of went over all the trails. He then presented the culmination of our discussion to ProStack at their last meeting, and they had a lot of discussion, but ultimately ended up agreeing. And I'll read their exact recommendation. ProStack voted 6-1 with one abstention to accept the combined OSAC ProStack trail recommendation list, including a trail from the Shan Shan property with additional analysis to be conducted prior to establishing a trailhead at the site. that additional language stems from a lot of discussion that they had. They have a lot of concerns about building a trailhead right at that area. They have concerns about it being on the hill. They have concerns about only being able to turn one way out of there since there's a median blocking it, which are all valid concerns. Watching their discussion, I think they basically said, this is fine, let's leave it where it is in the list, but before we ever move forward with it, let's make sure that all of this is discussed, addressed, and figured out. So I don't see any reason why we can't agree with them. Besides that, we didn't make any material changes to what we had put forward to ProStack. Patrick, did I miss anything that you might have
No,
heard during
Ken,
that meeting?
I think you're spot on. Pretty much complete consensus, even with the trail coming from Shan, with just maybe a little bit more of a feasibility study, if you will, on what the traffic flow would look like when you're at that property. I think some of it stems from the fact that, while BVI or the sports stable's been open, I think we've all seen a lot of people kind of make the U-turn around the corner. The cut-in has definitely helped, but I think from a couple people on ProStack, the thought was, well, initially, if you're going to do right in or right out, well, is that going to be realistic? And would you do right in, right out, and then flip around, the median, and then eventually come down to what would be a roundabout, and does that actually make traffic a little bit worse? So maybe a bigger picture approach to what that would look at. Because I do think, and even in brief conversation with Boulder County, I think there are some benefits to moving the trailhead from 3rd Avenue over to Shan.
Yeah.
Because we also have traffic congestion issues down on 3rd Ave. So I think they maybe just in addition to the trail, formalizing some kind of process to work with the county on the trailhead.
Okay. Sean, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, Sean Samuelson, member.
So ProStack agreed with what we put forward to them. Their only concern is that we need to look further into the reality of a trailhead there with lots of traffic concerns and that sort of thing. So what we're looking at right now is
So this is is this the one you wanted to see, Ken? This is just the way that they have it ranked with their top.
do you have the one that is the combined one? The combined one had Fire Station Park. Let's see. I don't think this is it. Basically, the majority of ours still stayed fairly high to the top. Their number one was Coyote Ridge, and that ended up number 2. So we had that lower down on our list, but beyond that, a lot of the trails that we had ranked high remained high.
Patrick, can you provide any understanding behind, there was also requests put forth in the ProStack minutes about having Coyote, I believe it was Coyote Ridge, with improvements funded out of the capital improvement program. What's that about?
I think there was some interest on ProStack's part. After we went through the community engagement meeting with the residents in the Coyote Ridge area, the thought of maybe making some upgrades without making wholesale change. Things that we talked about were water bars, kind of some bank stabilization, maybe a little bit of formalizing social trails, and having that be a part of the current 6 trails that we're going to build now. And I think that they were really interested in, I guess, a cleanup, for a lack of if there are safety issues. We knew that there were some drainage issues up there, but definitely not going wholesale change. Because I think what we heard out of the public engagement process was, it's probably better to leave well enough alone. It's a great amenity for the community. Not a lot of need to make it a regional amenity, but definitely some areas to clean up.
So in the combined list, was that not part of it? That was not part, Coyote Ridge wasn't part of the 7? I thought it was.
It was.
One of them. So I was confused as to why it received separate attention in their minutes. So I thought we had already addressed that. Anyway, am I confused?
Is it that they were specifically asking for it to come out of that budget category? Because we haven't yet identified how the construction would take place.
So I think where the conversation started was, is, the board has approved what we were calling the 6 trails or Trail B through D, what originally spurred out of this group to get designed and constructed. Part of that was taking a piece of Coyote Ridge and connecting it a social trail and connecting it to Coyote Ridge. So this would be in addition to that work. This would be, us hiring somebody to kind of dig some trenches and put timbers where it erodes, maybe.
But why the special designation? Why are they concerned which county comes out? Why would it not come out of the allotment
Of
for
general.
trail improvements?
I think it could. I think that they wanted to make the initial request to see if it was applicable for open space fund, and if not,
Oh,
they would like to
Do it
see it
anyway?
come out of general or capital. Yeah.
okay, that's all.
So, one of those kind of still foggy areas where I think that the group is still wanting to communicate communicate with this group and communicate with the board instead of making assumptions that they could just speak on open space dollars.
Okay.
So, anyway, the conversation that I had with Peter, we last week had talked about even removing some of these trails that might not seem applicable. One of those trails that we had talked about was the one that we had put forth for expedited trail construction. We were under a false pretense or false assumption at our last meeting that the trail that goes from High Plains Drive up to the top of McCaslin, we were under the assumption last month that that couldn't be built anymore. That's kind of what we came to. That's not true. It would just be expensive. ProStack's point of view is let's at least leave that on there so we don't lose it completely, which we're fine with. And then any other adjustments, they didn't necessarily disagree with anything that we brought up, but figured we could just move forward with the trails that we have to more or less expedite the recommendation process, and that we can remove those trails next year when we go through this. So basically what I think would be best for us at this time is if we go ahead and make a recommendation to the board approving this combined list, and that would then mirror what ProStack did. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns?
So is the ranking the gray column all the way to the left, or is it the first green column, the second one?
It is,
Ranking is gray all the way to the left.
yeah. And the green, yeah, so the green column is the combined one. Blue was ours alone, the purple was ProStack's alone, green was their scores and our scores combined. Which again, followed ours very closely, with the only adjustment being that Coyote Ridge got put to number 2 since that was their first choice.
It looks like it's 18 on theirs. Looks like
That's
they're
the
right.
combined school.
So that the 18 just says that was number 18 on the map.
Oh,
Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
sorry about that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The numbers that are in the green, blue, and purple just correspond to what the map number. So I guess unless anybody has any comments, I move that we accept the combined OSAC, ProStack trail list as our 5-year trail plan for the year. Is there a second?
I just have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So last year we had, and then this year, we had the top 6/7 trails that we wanted designated that the town's proceeding with. it looks like this top 6 or 7, if I'm incorrect, varies from that we put forward last year to the town that's going forward this year.
Yep.
So why wouldn't we still have the same top 6 or 7?
They don't have to be the same. It can vary based, I mean, there's new members that come in who might vote differently.
But if we're already proceeding with last year's top 6 or 7, why would that?
Well, this won't stop us from continuing with the construction efforts and the design efforts that have already taken place.
This would eventually form into budget recommendations for out years.
Right, so whatever we do here isn't going to impact what we've already started moving on, is that your concern?
Well, either that or just remove the ones that we've actually started on. I don't understand why we're even including them in this, but that's fine. I'm just curious.
That is a point. Which ones particularly are you referring to, Sean?
Well, again, the one,
Sean's right, there's a significant, actually, and I think you guys actually might have brought this up, and I don't want to speak on ProStack's behalf, but this was also raised at ProStack of saying, once they're approved, do they come off the list, right? Or do you keep them on? And I think, if I'm remembering, there was a thought from ProStack that since technically we're just doing design and engineer, there still would be an opportunity for the board to say, okay, this trail came in so far out of what our budget would be, we're not going to build it right now. And there may be a reason to keep them on the list until we actually know what the board's going to approve for construction.
Yeah, and I think that would be appropriate, especially if out of nowhere there's a lot of public debate about a specific trail and that doesn't move forward. I mean, there's a million reasons why these trails might not get built.
But it's a completely valid point. And Kim, you touch on there were 2 trails specifically, and I bring up the map, right? Bring it up on Google Earth. There are 2 trails that were really close to houses that have never had access or had a trail access behind there. And the board had requested that a level of public engagement take place to just kind of take the temperature of what those residents are. I mean, I don't think any of us want to drop a trail if we're going to get a ton of pushback from those surrounding homes. So I think ProStack's take was there still may be an opportunity that these don't happen under this kind of current process that we're going through, but it doesn't also mean that they're not a priority for the group. Unfortunately, I think the sequencing's off a little bit because we need to start trying to come up with some kind of budget plan for the out years. So it's, I was even mentioning just internally with Allison is, the trails plan may need to, just for this year, need to be something that we look at the end of the year after we come to the board and say, here's construction costs, which ones do you want us to build? Then I think you're absolutely right, Sean. It makes sense to eliminate those. Right. Because what I wouldn't want to have happen is the committees to come forward to the board with a recommended list and have the board say, well, wait a second, didn't we just approve these? So
So what's relevant about Sean's comment from the board perspective are the ones that have thus far been recommended for design, whatever, are they at the top of this list?
Yep. Yep.
And I'd hate to see one of them at the bottom.
Right.
It would be.
There are a few that slipped in above some of them, but they are still at the top of the list.
But now there
So
is a
should we
higher
make-
priority?
Should we make a column that says this is on the expedited,
or star them or asterisk them or something.
asterisk them and
in
just
all
say, these are the
fairness-
6
In
that?
all fairness, Ken, he initially did that, and I think that there was a little bit of maybe pushback from ProStack, and I think it's something we can ultimately work through. ProStack very much comes from the thought of you don't really worry yourself about budget or any of timing. We're just going to look at it in terms of a trail. But the reality is, when you're going to communicate a recommendation to the board. So maybe we do something like that. Maybe the recommendation is, and also identify trails that were part of the expedited 2016 or something.
Yeah. To give you guys background, when I sent out that trail list for everyone, there were a bunch of colors in there, and it was color-coded, showing a bunch of information, one of which was the expedited trails. ProStack didn't want any of that. They took all of that off. That way there would be a completely unbiased view rather than a historical view of how we got to where we are. So our ranking more or less ended up following with those trails at the very top. Pro stacks diverged a little bit, and that's why we're seeing the
So
difference.
Can we put those asterisks in
Yeah,
now?
so, sorry, Ken, if I'm recalling, this is probably.
Yep.
and
Yep.
You know what, Trish, there's 2 light switches kind of over your shoulder. Does that help a little bit?
Yep.
I mean, not that we can, but you can only see the colors. So Ken, if you want to kind of explain what your process is, and then I'll do my best, if I can, to kind of talk from the pro stack point of view, and then, maybe we can find a middle point.
Yeah, trying to remember exactly what the colors were. So
There's a legend.
yeah,
I mean,
So you just need to
the
sort of-
blue is trail was not included on last year's trail plan. Orange is trail was included in recommendation of the board for expedited construction of just as high priority target. Yellow is trail was included in recommendation of the board for expedited construction. So those are probably the ones we're concerned about. in
The-
this
yep.
discussion is yellow. Green is trail was initially to be included in recommendation of the board for expedited construction, but ultimately removed as it was duplicative to an existing trail. And then purple is trail to be funded, constructed by developer.
yep. So yeah, we had initially included green when we made a recommendation. Pro stack said those green ones are duplicatives, take them off. So the yellow ones are the ones that are expedited, along with Coyote Ridge, which is a little bit further down in the list.
It's the orange one.
It was the
Yep.
orange one because we weren't sure what was going to happen.
Exactly.
It was on the
And I think
list.
that was the I think you might have shown up at the Pro Stack meeting and spoke pretty well to that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Both you guys were there, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was at the
Public input.
public input, and then I actually
Yeah.
stayed at their meeting to explain some of our thinking on it.
So if we look at the combined one, those yellow ones are still pretty high to the top.
But I do agree that, I get it for not wanting it in the ranking, but I think to the board, they are going to ask the question of why did we have 7 different ones than we might have now? So we might want to identify that in our recommendation to them, just so they're clear.
So saying that it deviated this year because of a changed methodology, or would?
I would just say that these are the ones that are being looked at, and then when is that due to come back? Like, when are you guys done with your, when is the design and all of that done?
It's gonna probably come in fits and starts, but probably November. Some of the easy ones will come fairly quick,
Yeah.
but the bigger ones will probably be a November timeline.
So what I would ask, sitting as a trustee up there to vote, is are our top priorities represented in the list we're about to fund? Or has something usurped?
And the answer to that question is nothing has usurped it. It's, we chose the trails that we did primarily because they close out the McCaslin corridor. We were trying to make sure that there was the ability to walk, run, bike, whatever, all up and down that, so it was easier to get to the trails to the west. That's still a top priority, and we looked at it as a system. So even though things might look a little bit different here, I think if we were still going to make a recommendation for a system of trails, that would still be the top of the heap.
Because our thought process was that gets you out to the open space. That gets you from the neighborhoods out to the open space.
So with that said, Sandy, what is, as someone sitting on the board, is it best for you just to hear us again echoing what ProStack said, or do you want us to echo what ProStack said and say that we still consider the trails under design to be of the highest priority and should continue with construction, or something along those lines? What's?
You mean for your 5-year trail recommendation?
Yes.
For 5 years, I think what I prefer is to hear the combined,
Mhm.
because that's the simplification for us at the board level.
And that was the
If you're
whole
happy
goal.
with it- If you're happy with the compromise position, then the compromise position should be presented. If you're unhappy and have been unable to reach consensus, then you each represent your own and let the board play mediator.
Well, I mean, Patrick, I watched
Yeah.
ProStack's meeting, but my,
I think that the consensus is there.
yeah.
It may, in Sandy's point, I was just kind of quickly jotting down some notes to potentially lead on to your recommendation. It may be as simple as saying, OSAC would like to make a recommendation to approve the joint trails plan as adopted by the committees with further identification of the trails included in the 2016 expedited trails project. That at least gives the indication that the priorities are there, and it includes what's going on this year.
That works for me.
And then, we would still have the issue of the deviation of ProStack saying we'd like a little bit of further work on the Shan-Shan trailhead piece. I don't know if that's something that this group wants to discuss, or if that's fine saying, hey, this is where we deviate, or give direction at that point.
And I'm not sure we need to address that in our recommendation. I mean, that's something that would happen during their due diligence anyway if we wanted to move forward with it. So it's not like we would ignore it and just say, let's go plop that trailhead in there. And it's worth saying that ProStack did agree with putting a trail in there. They just weren't sold on the trailhead. And that was kind of where they were getting.
Well, I think the trailhead part, I mean, I think we are all aware that we have to work with Boulder County. We have to work with the neighborhoods that are around that, work with traffic controls and everything. It just, our philosophy is, from when we've bought it, that as everything builds around, it's a good place to have a trailhead if possible, because it will help people be able to enter via the town center. We already know a number of people already park in original town to access those trails anyways, that maybe that would help get people off of there. But I definitely think that there's discussion that has to happen around the logistics of it actually happening. But I don't think it's ever, until we get through that process, that we're ever going to knock it down is not something we want to do.
Agreed, and
Yeah.
it's still reflected in the trail plan as a priority, because even on this combined listing, it's still number 4. So it still is reflected that this is something we care significantly about.
I would not lose the separate documentation, though. I like how this, as a combined, it has OSAC and has ProStack, because on that particular item, it shows that you wanted a trailhead. And they put trail. And I think you need to keep documented that this group's priority for long-term goal is a trailhead. So I don't want that separate intelligence lost and, just.
Well, the 5-year trail plan will say trailhead if we adopt the combined list. So that we're not losing the head part of it. ProStack just called out the fact that they have concerns and want further review done.
I guess it does say trailhead in the combined here too.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you guys can continue to have separate priorities.
Yep.
That not every detail needs to be addressed. That's fine.
I did mention this to ProStack too, that, I don't know how it happens, or if it happens this year, it happens in a couple out years. I think now this setup lends for a column for some kind of public input, which I think was the original intent of getting away from the individual 5-year trails plans that were tied to a budget number in the year. Now you can go OSAC, ProStack, and then, maybe we come up with some mechanism for then have the community weigh in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got kind of the whole gamut covered. I think there's been some on ProStack who've always felt that just due to the dollar amount of the trail, that there should be some level of public engagement, which I know you guys have done at community events, and ProStack's looking at doing with some of the expedited trails. So
Can you, this door-to-door engagement,
That was something I was going to bring up.
yeah, go ahead.
So the board, I mean, you guys, when Patrick was doing the presentation, I mean, it was clear that we want door-to-door engagement, but one thing I didn't get out of that, and I'm wondering if there's been conversation on your ends, is who's responsible for that door-to-door engagement? Is that something that falls on
Well-
committee shoulders, or is that staff?
I think this is always the situation when one trustee has a specific opinion on something, and the board listens, but doesn't necessarily respond in a manner that puts forth a process.
Yeah.
And so you gotta be careful with this one. Deborah is the person who said that trail off Torrey's Peak, sort of in that marshy area, if you've ever just walked over it, that those neighbors may not be that gung-ho about a trail there. And so that is the specific area, and it's not a half bad idea to knock on those doors, because you don't want to have the trucks out there digging something up and then have a lot of opposition, and that's a fairly finite number of homes,
Yeah.
not on doors. So if that mushrooms into a broader survey of the community on trail priorities, I really think that needs to be thought through really carefully how that proceeds.
I think ProStack, from what I gather, was just planning on doing just door to door to the neighbors that would be impacted
On that particular trail?
on that particular
Yeah.
trail. I don't think there was any appetite for opening up the expedited trails for any more review. And I'm kind of remembering back to some previous comments, I think, we were looking at doing some kind of informal, just questioning, I wouldn't even say surveying, at community events about if there were trail needs out there.
Which we have done
Yeah.
at multiple events.
Every event we
Yeah.
go to.
Yeah, every
So
event
if
we've gone.
there's an opportunity to start to tie that information in with this plan, then I think that it'd either help inform decisions or at least put things on everybody's radar.
So my only thought about that one particular trail that I would just point out is if we put the trail on the back end of McCaslin, they might get a social trail regardless if they don't want one. So one of the things, and I talked about this when I went to ProStack, was if we're not going to put one there, do we look at putting signs that say, don't cut across here? Well, no, I mean, but there's,
I get it.
well, but one of the things, and I think that's why it stayed on the list, and one of the things we were looking for the design group to know, is it feasible to put one there? I realize they may not want people going behind, but as you.
But that's not their private property, right?
It's not
Right.
even, I'm not even saying they're private it's just if we have the one out there, we're putting the one that is cutting at Colton there, on Colton Road, because people can't walk the 10 feet this way. So I'm like, whether or not you want one, it may be better to be a maintained one or one that has a surface that, or to know that really a surface is not good there and to communicate that to people that maybe they would stay off of it. That's my only thought. I'm not.
The policy conundrum is, many of us have trails right out, I sit on my patio and people chat with me all the time. That trail is that close to my house. And so the policy issue is, to what degree is this a community benefit versus something we don't proceed on, even
Yeah.
though it may make good policy sense because some neighbors don't like it. So it's always the yin and yang.
And this one,
Go ahead. I think it's always a good idea to get the temperature and to explain in a well-reasoned fashion, which you just explained. I like that, Trish, that, the unintended consequence of not doing a formalized trail is there's nothing stopping people from cutting through public property. There isn't, and we could put a sign up there, but that would be sort of unusual for us to put a sign that don't crossing.
Well, it's
People-
more a sign, but one of the things we have talked about is more signage or, you know, wayfinding, like, and telling people when things are not done. Some of the outreach we've done lately is explaining to people what we do own as a town, what is other people's property, what is,
Right, right, right.
you know, just educating folks.
So, yeah, it's mitigating what we need to say.
I was going to say beyond what Trish added on, I mean, you mentioned the community benefit. This trail in particular allows for a direct path to and from El Dorado K through 8 and allows kids, families, whoever, to no longer have to ride their bikes or walk down the busy roads. It's a much safer option.
So is there coordination in this door-to-door between OSAC and ProStac?
I
I think that that's probably what we, you know, right now, I mean, ProStack's assuming that they're taking this whole thing on. And some of it in part because,
Well, it is
I
an
probably-
interior trail,
right.
but it is a connection
As-
to,
And I think, you know, the recommendation to expedite initially came from this group.
Yeah,
I think the more coordination,
I'll reach out to Peter, see if he's done
and share
anything.
the talking points, because the response you get back is largely dependent on the question
Present.
you ask.
Yeah.
So we've got to be careful that we're not leading to a negative response by being negative in the questioning.
Agreed.
And, you know, if we err, let's err on the side of positivity, because that's your charter. Right. Your charter is a well-balanced trail plan.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Patrick, can we scroll down to see the last view?
So those bottom ones, number 20, well, number 22, number 16 in the green. That was another place where we deviated in the way we did our ranking from ProStack. ProStack decided to rank those even though they're being built by developers and are going to happen no matter what. We didn't rank them because we didn't see the value in doing so. So they fell pretty far down to the list, whereas you'll notice they're not at the bottom of ProStack's list. Just add some explanation for that.
and I know that at least from staff's perspective, we still try to continue to figure out the best way to incorporate development trails. Because we'll get a lot of them, and it's important that there's connectivity with our existing. But to your
Yeah.
point, we've kind of got a couple of different school of thoughts there. And so, but we'll have them through STC, we'll have them through the Discovery Project, we'll have them in the Remington Project.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had it in the Coal Creek Crossing, and we have it in the Coal Creek Crossing development.
If we go one up, Patrick, number 14. Or maybe it's not 14. Maybe go up one more. Yeah, 14. Now the verbiage on here
Yeah,
isn't.
it is inaccurate.
Should
Yes.
that say east boundary or?
So,
Right.
That's another one that was discussed that will get dropped.
yeah, the description was a carryover, because that trail we know it's not even feasible, that trail, it can't happen topography wise. I don't think the town has much of an appetite to see it. I know the residents don't have an appetite to see it.
And then number 15 down below as well, that's also going to get dropped. That's the Frico ditch, and that was one that when Boulder County came and spoke to us, they said, no, that's not in the plans. We discussed it for various reasons. We didn't build that, and we have absolutely no interest in building it. So for that one, there is no reason to keep it on.
So
I do agree with Sandy, though, we should just move it to somewhere where we keep the historical reasons why, so we don't, so that in 3 years, someone's not putting it back on the list and doesn't know, that way at least.
You know, what I may do that may help this group is, I know you guys don't really participate in the amenities prioritization that ProStack goes through, but I may, if you guys want to see it just as a reference, shoot you what that looks like, because Tricia does exactly that. And then items actually don't ever fall off the list, they just kind of go into then another set of completed. And it's got a little bit more of a narrative, you know.
And I think that'd be useful.
I think that maybe we can do some formatting.
Okay. So I'll retract the motion that I made earlier. Patrick, do you want to read what you had cobbled together from the conversation
Yeah.
again?
OSAC would like to make a recommendation to approve the joint trails plan as adopted by the committees, further identifying the trails included in the 2016 expedited trail project.
Before we make a formal motion on it, does anyone have any problems with that wording or disagreements? All right. I move that we recommend the verbiage as read just now. Is there a second? Tricia seconds. All opposed? Or all four, sorry. All opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Okay. So we'll jump back to the prior agenda item then and do the Superior Town Center Parks 1 and 2.
So I'll give you guys just kind of a little bit on how I ended up putting the presentation together, and then my guess is that if there are questions as we go throughout, we can just address it that way. If you guys feel like you want to see the entire presentation, and then we come back to questions, that's fine too. I was explaining to Ken earlier, the one thing that I tried to do, in addition to listing the public engagement process and just kind of the overall big picture process, was at the end of this presentation, I grabbed all of the previous OSAC recommendations. So as we're seeing it, if you guys want to say, didn't we make a recommendation on this, or what was our stance on this, I'm more than happy to kind of flip to the end, because one of the things that I really want to do with this group specifically is start to highlight. You guys had some very specific areas of concern, which really made a lot of sense, and we've really tried to be as diligent as possible to address those concerns. So I think if we just kind of keep it free-flowing, we can hop around. But as you can see, something that we've started to do just internally, which has gotten some legs, is start to kind of explain the public process. This actually came up more so with the El Dorado Park. As we got closer to construction, people were feeling like, we weren't either doing public process or honoring public process. So what I started to do was I'm a little bit more visual. So I feel like this is another project that's been really thoroughly vetted. We started this in 2014. We had public engagement meetings, thoroughly reviewed by both committees, including a couple of on-site walks that you guys did, which I thought was really smart of you to do. Board review, and then kind of where we're at now, which was direction from the board to try to get ourselves to an FDP, which is a final development plan. We went out for bid earlier this year, hired a consultant, Matrix Design Group. Those guys specialized in parks next to creek corridors and creek stabilization. They've done a lot down along the Platte. They've done a lot with Big Dry Creek. So you can kind of see where we're at here. So for those of you who've been on the committee, this is kind of where we left it. This is the last image that you guys and the Board of Trustees and ProStack and frankly the public saw. This we refer to as Park Parcel 2 or number 2, and we'll start to refer to number 1. So if I start to just call them by numbers, know that this is Park 1, Park 2. There are 5 parks identified in the Superior Town Center. The process started trying to create continuity between all 5 parks and fill needs that we already had in town, which was a bit of a challenge. You're trying to plan parks for residents who aren't here yet, and also meet the needs of your existing residents. So through public process, we started to identify some trends, one of them being an open athletic surface, playground area, seating areas here, and then big kind of landscape buffers here protecting the creek corridor. And as we go, I actually have another image. Some of you on the committee will remember it. We had a really cool image that showed the sensitive areas in Coal Creek, which once we get through it, I'd like to kind of highlight what we've done to achieve that. Trail connectivity between Parks 1 and 2 and Marshall Road. Again, this was just kind of a general wag of saying, well, we know we need to get people from here to here. And what's the best way to do it? We've got a ton of grade in here, so that was a challenge from early on. Moving over here to Park 1, maybe a little bit more of an informal grass area, nothing programmed, but just an area that if you wanted to do maybe a little guys baseball game or go out and just play a quick pickup kickball or something, you could. This is the existing detention pond that's out there. Try to accommodate some level of parking, which again, as I mentioned, that's a struggle with these two, but we've come up with some pretty creative ideas, I think, to address it. And then just some kind of water quality here, again, wanting to protect the creek. And this here, existing Coal Creek Trail. So this is a little bit about where we were in 2015. Last time you guys saw it, the last time ProStack saw it, the last time the board saw it. Any recommendations that the committees had made and any feedback that the board had given was based upon this plan here. At that time, this was pre us even thinking about the Coal Creek corridor. If you guys remember, I don't remember exactly who at this group was on that committee, but if you kind of remember, we were just looking at it as park parcel, and then this kind of unknown in the middle. And what do you do with it? Who's going to own it? Is it going to be the developers? Is it going to be the towns? What can we do with it? What can't we do with it? What environmentally can we do with it? And per the board's direction, we were able to hire a consultant and really start to address it. So from here, we're now here. So this is the newest Park 1 and 2. What you're seeing here is environmentally, water quality, grade-wise, right-of-way-wise, parking-wise, what we can do from here, concept level. This is kind of pie in the sky, flat, not really factoring anything in, to here. So what you can start to see and what we started to learn is that we could really actually make the Coal Creek corridor the focus of the park by making really cool enhancements along the creek corridor. Per what we needed to do with water flows, we needed between here on McCaslin and here, we had to build 3 drop structures at 3 feet. Everything that we do here also affects water downstream. The hydrologists for Matrix have been very diligent trying to figure out placement of drop structures. Some of the concerns, if you guys remember, we were always really concerned with, well, what about a 5-year flood or a 10-year flood or a 100-year? What happens to this field? Well, these guys have started to figure out through the hydrology how to build the drop structures, how to start to stabilize the banks, how to upgrade the creek corridor and keep separate from this surface over here and the surface over here. You'll see we were still able to kind of maintain a flat playable surface. But we actually started to think, well, you know what? One of the things we talked about early on was maybe it'd be cool to do some kind of amphitheater. Maybe it'd be great for a place just for people to read a book who didn't want to be in the creek corridor but wanted to be close to it. So where the amphitheater used to kind of sit here in the middle, and maybe we just generically throw it here. we know we're gonna have a huge rise in the road. And we can lift this grade of this field up, because if this were to flood, you've got the bridge here. So we don't have to actually keep that existing grade. Well, what if we started to do maybe a cool little gathering place, or a little amphitheater, or a little Busker Fest area down by the creek, and use the grade? So where you see, you know, maybe the amphitheater was over here, now you see it here. We're able to get vehicles down in there.
Are they gonna cross the creek? Or are they stopping?
No, it's a little bit hard to see. There's a big concrete path right here.
So that's now walking
Yep.
between those two sets?
Yeah, something else that you guys will probably remember is ADA accessibility, and what are the slopes going to look like. Where previous versions we had really kind of straight, here's a line, here's a line. The idea started to become, you know, why don't we start to play a little bit with the contours and start to wrap them around and give people these separate environments that they could be in. You know, we know that this is probably going to be a little bit athletic heavy, activity heavy. Well, how cool would it be to start to make these little gathering areas over here? You know, creek crossing, you know, maybe our youth committee can do some kind of, you know, award ceremony down there. Maybe we start looking to move in volunteer appreciation dinner down there. Some of those kind of changes.
How many people does that area accommodate?
Several hundred could fit in this area here. The stage is fairly small, but a good number, and something that we're thinking about again with the water flows is now we have the ability to start to change that grade in there, where originally it was kind of low and then it raised up. Well, you know, maybe this kind of, the grade here becomes a little bit different than the grade up here. The grade here obviously being really flat. So you can kind of create these places. We really wanted to start to kind of create special areas. We kept hearing from the board, outside the box, like really wow us with this placemaking. And once we really started looking at it, we were able to gain a ton of flexibility here on Park Parcel 1. Something else that we heard from the get-go was lack of parking. What are you going to do? Could you even have a movie in the park? Where are you going to put them? Well, we started looking at maybe you can do a ride in and a ride out on McCaslin. It would keep people from Rock Creek having to come all the way down and park. And what we knew was going to be a really small parking area anyway. We've got some sightline issues here that prevented us from bringing this parking lot over. We wouldn't want people to come in and then come out while you have cars whipping around. So we really worked from a parking angle to say, well, where would be kind of the next place to put it? And you were able to see that we were able to get quite a bit of parking in here. We worked really hard on programming the fields and trying to estimate, okay, how many people would we have in this park on a Saturday in the fall? Well, it's not just usage here, and it's not just usage here. You've got the Coal Creek Trail. You know, we started to realize this area up here will probably become the de facto western edge of the Coal Creek Trail. We know that people park at Town Hall. We know that people use the restroom at Asti Park. You put a pavilion here in a parking lot and a Starbucks up here, well, this area starts to become a beautiful way to end the Coal Creek Trail before you transition. So this accomplishes some of the concerns that we heard about parking. And again, pavilion, originally we were showing a really large, maybe a really large overlook pavilion, which is great. I think we're still able to accomplish the pavilion, and we were also able to accomplish parking. And then we still have the ability to do some really cool entryway sign, knowing that this corner is going to kind of become the entryway into the town. You know, we really spent a lot of time visioning as you come off the DDI. What do you want to see when you come here? How can we best represent what we're hearing the board say, what we know this community's about? So still with the ability to do some entryway signage here.
Can you talk a little bit about like pedestrian foot traffic between the two parks?
Yeah, absolutely. Adding the drop structures, having to add the drop structures started to give us ways to connect Park 1 and 2, and something I believe that came out of this group was the need also to have a trail on both sides. And I think I have that in one of the recommendations. But we've got the underpass here, and then we'd also have some level of street sidewalk here. You would be able to, at multiple points, 1, 2, the bridge obviously 3, 4, and then 5, cross from one side of the park to the other. And I'll get a little bit further down into some imagery of how we think that those can become opportunities for environmental education play, how those can become opportunities just for kind of peaceful sitting spaces. But we were a little unsure on what that was going to look like. You know, we knew that this guy was probably going to be in there. We knew we'd have the crossing here. And we weren't 100% sure what we wanted to do here, you know, and again, this is still a little bit conceptual. I'll show you guys, but this is that really environmentally sensitive area. that we
That's
talked
the
about.
bend.
That's the
Yes.
bend, yep.
Yep.
And we specifically,
Yep.
didn't want to do a crossing here. And again, we're not really actually showing the crossing here. We're actually going to treat this right now as a little bit more of maybe a viewpoint or one of those kind of environmental corridors where you can kind of go out. We know that there will be a drop structure here. The other thing we could do is just nip off this corner. So
What's a drop structure?
a drop structure is where you'll see the creek and then it stair steps its way down.
So in
It's a
Purple
waterfall.
Park.
Yeah.
So
And those are required. We needed to at least go 15 feet from here to here to keep the water flowing.
So Patrick, is the connection, like, you've got the main road coming in here, right? And then I assume that's a bridge over Cold Creek?
Yeah, this is Marshall Road.
Yep.
Yep, and the Marshall Bridge.
And so is that an underpass for foot traffic?
You will have 2 underpasses.
Okay.
And again, I believe that was a recommendation from this group. Originally, we were just showing kind of connection on the north side here, but it really did make sense to do both. And I think that, you know, in all honesty, that'll have to be something that as we progress, the board will need to consider. What do those look like? Are they box culverts? Is it something more decorative? The last conversation I recall having is it needed to probably be something more than just a box culvert. It would be great, you know, we started actually looking at, well, maybe there's ways that you can actually tie the design of the bridge into the park, but the bridge is a little bit of a separate animal because that's going to come from the developer, not the town. I would like to see some continuity. I think there's some cool ways with bridge designs that you can accentuate everything that we're trying to kind of do in that corridor. But you're absolutely right,
Yeah,
John.
my main concern was heavy traffic flow and pedestrians
Yep.
continually going across there.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
with a lot of these people that maybe coming in here, maybe from out of town to the sports center and things like that.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't, the other thing that has always been kind of a work in progress is I'm not quite sure how high that bridge is going to rise. You know, we know that there's going to be a significant rise in the bridge because we have to get it up and over. And initially that was causing some problems because until we knew the span of the bridge, we didn't really know if we could get ADA trails in there. But we will have quite a bit of grade separation from the traffic up here and the pedestrians down here. Probably a little bit more actually than what you see behind Town Hall with McCaslin. My guess is there'll be even a little bit more grade separation. Some other ideas that we had come up with is maybe some tiered seating over here, opportunities for educational gardens, outdoor education areas, open grass. So for those of you that will remember, this was kind of no man's land down here. We weren't quite sure who can control it, what can go on. Is it just going to kind of stay the same way? And we started to say, well, you know, why not utilize it and upgrade it as good open spaces, opportunities for outdoor education?
So is that sod?
No, this would probably be more of the Rock Creek native seed mix. Again, I think that all that stuff I think it's up for for discussion. It could very easily be sodded because we'd have the ability to put the irrigation in there right now. The images that we're showing a little bit later on are probably a little bit more native and outdoor education interpretation.
Is that really gonna remain green up there?
Nope.
Up there?
So this is
Hotel area.
Hotel
Is that a
area,
hotel? Yeah,
center
that's what I
point.
thought, just
Yeah,
to-
no,
Yeah.
this won't either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just-
And right there, that's the Firehouse Subs Starbucks structure, right?
Center point. And our, we'll, again, something that we're working on as this comes together is we know that our aesthetics over here need to start to match the aesthetics over here, which need to start to match the aesthetics of the hotel. We're constantly working as plans come in for here, we'll eventually have to accommodate all that drainage. So it's been a bit of a moving target, but Matrix has done an unbelievable job starting to figure it out.
Just a sort of comment, they may want to, in this pictorial, make that more clear that that's not green space.
Mhm.
Making it
Right,
green makes it think that
Very gray.
people, yeah.
Concrete.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to go gray, but we have to make it clear that something's going there and it's not just grass
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Park.
extending out.
Well, and at that, once it gets to that FDP level, it'll be there for sure. And that's easy. Those are easy changes for us to make. So hopping over here to park number 2, restroom facility, we were able to kind of get that on the edge of the field. I think that was something that there was a lot of board concern and community concern about. Well, could you have a field and not have restrooms? I think we're able to accommodate a men's and women's restroom facility, year-round facility. Walkway around. Again, maybe some tiered seating or tiered hillsides that people could kind of say, well, as you come off the bridge here, you can kind of walk down. Something that we've been working on with the developer is this used to be shown as parking, and this used to be shown as kind of a restaurant pad site. Well, as Matrix started to play around with the design and the actual square footage in the layout, you can get a little bit more square footage for a restaurant here, and we gain a whole lot more parking here. There was a lot of concern about not having a drop-off area. You're busy, you want to come home from work, get your kid to practice, you need to park. A little bit on street here, a little bit on street here. Now a good amount of parking not too far away. Just flipping those two, taking what was the restaurant, putting it over here, and putting the parking lot here seemed to make a little bit more sense. The developer has been very amenable to that. Kind of vision a little bit of almost like a Wrigleyville. Maybe 2 stories, patio up on the top, maybe even the potential for like some stadium seating if we've got your kids got a soccer match or something's going on. Practice, you could come over here, maybe work, grab a bite to eat, be on a rooftop and watch down on the field. With a lower level patio here, people walking around the restaurant, people walking down into the park, maybe some railing here where you be able to lean, watch a sports activity. So we felt like, again, this was a good win for us. We had always really struggled with what we were going to do with parking. It gets the restaurant a little bit more square footage, and it also really kind of holds that corner. Now as you come around into town, you've got, instead of a parking lot, you've got something a restaurant, something that's going to bring people in. You can maybe do something kind of cool on the backside here.
So, quick question on the river. It looks like it, from the previous slide, it changed.
Yep.
It looks like it's changing quite a bit. Will there be access into the river and for
Yeah,
people
so
to play in the water?
and that's actually, so what we really started to realize is the creek and the creek corridor, and I think that there are probably some on this group, and I know there's some board members and community members. The creek's the amenity, the creek's the opportunity, and the fields are kind of here. So what ties this whole thing together and what allows us to kind of flow the paths really is the creek corridor. We, through this process, have been working with the master drainage plan for Coal Creek. You can kind of see the recommendation to stabilize the creek through vertical drop structures that would provide 9 foot of fall from McCaslin to US 36. We also knew a lot of damage from the 2013 floods. The braid that you're seeing on the creek is actually way worse than that now. That image was actually pre-2013 flood. Now it's everywhere. This project now allows us to take it back to a healthy flow to where we can get a little bit of control. Because right now, it's, in places it's a foot thick, in places it's 2 inches thick. It's not even really a healthy habitat. What was the kind of the sensitive habitat is actually now underwater. So by cleaning up the creek, stabilizing the creek, adding stabilization, it's going to allow some of that to come back. And we'll do kind of significant plant upgrades. Oops. So again, what I referenced earlier, we had worked from the very, very get-go with environmental resources to do an environmental assessment from a habitat, kind of plant life and animal life. And what you see here in blue is what they were calling moderate quality. What you see in orange was really poor quality. And then we had this little area here, which was high quality habitat, Preble mouse, which is endangered, obviously. And we knew that we had some nesting going on over here. So, being sensitive to that, you can start to see the amount of plant material that gets added in really buffers the field. And this line is a bit exaggerated. I know this group had always had concerns about this side of the field and the proximity to the creek, but there's going to be significant buffering in through here and actually able to upgrade habitat. So what we're looking at doing, these are all recommended riparian species. So this is the type of plant material that would get, once Coal Creek is stabilized, channelized, we know what material's coming out, we know what material stays in, we could start to come in with improved plants and rebuild that corridor back up. These are all riparian species that have been successful in the area. So again, I think kind of a major win from where we originally started, which was, potential synthetic turf field right next to the creek.
Which has been backed off, right? We're
Yeah,
natural turf.
Yep, all natural turf. And then these are a little bit more of the upland species. So this would be more consistent with what you would see throughout the park and a little bit further away from the creek. But we are starting to get to the point of planting plant species and organizing it to make sure that the Coal Creek corridor can really become this amazing amenity. So as you can see, again, based off of a lot of comments from the board, this group, ProStack, the community, there was a huge need to protect the riparian corridor, but we did have this bridge that we know is going to come over. I mean, that's the given. There are going to be some impacts in here. So Matrix, which I think is a great idea, really started to kind of create these separate corridors. The 2 natural riparian corridors, and then what we started to call urban wild corridor. And we'll start with maybe some imaging of the natural riparian corridor. A little bit of formalization, but nothing too crazy. You're not coming in with concrete walls. You're not coming in with maybe what you would see under US 36 or behind. It's kind of nice, quiet seating areas, natural areas. I would even say that this is probably, obviously way more wooded. This is a mountain shot. But really wanting to kind of preserve what's there, but still create opportunities for people to go down and enjoy it.
I thought there was some, we didn't want people actually in the creek, in the water.
OSAC wanted it, but we were told by the naturalist or what. So can we now actually?
Yeah, no,
access to the water?
I keep kind of going all the way back. I think a lot of those comments actually spurred from initial comments from the developer. We've always been able to access the creek. There's nothing that would restrict you from going down to the creek at any point.
No habitat issues.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
We
Because I
couldn't-
remember conversations or several people saying that we didn't want people in the creek.
Well, yes, but.
It's fine if that's been
The
clear.
predecessor, the other members of this group before you guys have always wanted to get their activity there. But there was a point at which we were told that was not possible, because I thought it was habitat sort of issues and that kind of thing. So if it's possible.
That's what I thought it was too, that they were or either Habitat or, I'm fine if that's okay. I just wanted to clarify, just because we're showing people in the
Yep.
creek, and if that was true, we
Yeah.
probably wouldn't want to have pictures.
No, yeah,
showing them.
and Trish, to your point, I do know that we had a ton of discussion about how to prevent the really active activity from here spilling over. We'll kind of do a quick flip here from that natural. All right, so now we know that there is going to be the bridge. We know that there is going to be a little bit more of a development that's going to come over. And what can we still do to make it a Great Creek corridor, not make it look industrial, still give it that open feel, which we heard was really, really important, but accomplish what you need to at the same time, which is going over Marshall to get into STC. And again, these are just, some thoughts and ideas where we bring in, cuts of sandstone or cuts of rock mixed with concrete. We kind of, we know we have to channelize it pretty tight down in there and control it. But it's not just a gray box. I think that the one thing that we heard from the board specifically is you didn't want to just walk into this kind of wet gray concrete tube and come out on the other side, that it really needed to kind of all flow together.
So then my other question would be about the amount of water flow. Now, I understand we're putting the drops in to improve water flow, but, these pictures indicate nice water flow, like lots of water flow. We've seen Coal Creek not be that full.
Yep.
We've heard things that, in public comment that there might be diversion of the creek further upstream that maybe needs to be addressed or looked at through Boulder County. But do we anticipate that we will have nice water flow going through?
Coal Creek will flow how Coal Creek it'll flow, whether we get another huge flood or it dries out, down to the trickle.
We were told, though, at one point, at the board level, that there are things we can do upstream to augment the water flow. It sounded actually quite doable, which surprised me because.
I think a lot of it's actually been done with what Alex and Public Works did already. But there will be nothing that we can definitively do to prevent.
What does it look like now if I walked along? Is it mostly dry? Or is
It's just a swamp with 4 or 5 channels. Yeah.
Because I'm with Trish, if you can keep watering it, it's prettier.
Yeah. I mean, I hesitate to use Boulder Creek because I think that's, some people want to see Boulder Creek, and then sometimes we mention Boulder Creek and people get really upset with us. It'll channelize it, and you'll have, all this has been modeled through hydrology to sit up high enough that it wouldn't be, if we got hit with a 100-year flood, there's going to be impacts for sure.
Yeah.
A 2-year, a 5-year, a 10-year, probably not, because this will all become stabilized and controlled, and the fields will sit up a little bit higher. I hesitate to say that it's going to look like that because in any given storm, in any given situation, it's going to be hard to control. It'll probably be a lot like, what Rock Creek looks like. It's a fairly contained. We've got drop structures down there and walked over. And for the most part, it stays within its banks. There are the exception where the water is going to go where the water is going to go. And we could always look at doing more diversion upstream. We've been looking very specifically from McCaslin over to US 36. I think any additional diversion would probably need to be a a pretty big separate project, which we could look into.
I was looking more that it wouldn't dry out, not so
More water,
much.
not less.
Yeah, more water going
Yeah.
through than, you know,
Which is
not a
great.
raging river,
Right.
but a steady stream that always was flowing.
By how
Something that
tightly it's
moves.
channeled, right?
Yeah,
Enough water so there's movement of water and not just.
stagnant, yeah.
This would channelize it. This will take all the different braids that you're seeing now and put it in one shot. So if anything, it'll do what you're saying. I think in a drought year, again, we're not doing anything like putting in a pump system to recirculate water. I know that we had talked about that. I don't know if it'd be cost prohibitive, but we don't have a pump system that would take water from the one side and put it up to the other. It's Coal Creek's part of a bigger collective where that water needs to kind of flow downstream and hit the next community and next community.
No, I don't think we were looking to pump. I think more people have indicated that they think that there's stoppage upstream that maybe we should ask about.
I'm not aware of any. We can I'd be happy to follow up with the county to see if there's any restriction of water.
I think their interest was in consistent water. We're not looking for rapids, nobody's going to hit their
Tubing or-
Yeah.
But just presence of water.
Mhm.
And that was, like I said, it was made to seem somewhat doable way back. So it'd be interesting to revisit that. And on the other side of it, if there are periods of more swampiness, what's your experience with mosquitoes? I mean, that close to all the people in sports and whatnot, it seems. to
Yeah,
be-
I think
That's
narrowing
the
and
side.
focusing the creek and doing the habitat upgrade actually helps it. Because what we have right now, it's just swamp everywhere.
Yeah. This will create a less opportunity for standing water
Yeah.
and thus less opportunity for mosquitoes. Yeah.
And once these are built, these will become town parks, and we'll treat the mosquitoes just like we do now.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we have mosquito traps and larva traps, and when our numbers get to a certain number, Otter Tail comes in and sprays, and you guys will probably see a notice for a spray in the next 2 days because Rock Creek's mosquitoes are high right now, and then every time the farmer opens the ditch up in open space, it gets really, really busy with mosquitoes in Original Town.
I just have a question about the trail.
Uh-huh.
Is there going to be a nice walking trail along the creek?
So you'll have the existing Coal Creek Trail, and that's right now what's planned is close to the creek.
Okay.
And then actually, it's a little bit, we're anticipating this tree canopy here with the regional trail wraps around.
Okay, so there will still be a trail that wraps completely
Yeah,
on the
or
north
if it-
side.
The plan will be to actually probably formalize and either concrete the existing Coal Creek Trail or at least, in one image we were showing, parts of it being crusher fine
Mm-hmm.
up here. Now we're starting to show all concrete trail down in there.
On the north side?
Correct.
Where the current regional trails. So what about the other trails? Are we talking crusher fine on those?
Concrete.
All concrete.
Concrete. Again, just planning for that. You're in a floodway. It's from a maintenance perspective. It is easier for us to have concrete down there as opposed to having.
And if it's
crusher
concrete,
fine.
do you guys then, that's what makes it that it will get shoveled in the winter
Mhm.
and all of that as well, so that actually makes it,
Yep.
you'd be able to use it year-round as a,
Yep.
yeah.
Now, I would say, maybe some of these smaller connectors that actually lead you down into the creek, maybe those become crusher fine. So it feels a little bit less formalized, but from what we've started to learn and what we've heard response-wise is if we can do concrete trails, let's do concrete trails.
This thing, guys, I'm assuming concrete, Patrick, is that?
All of it concrete.
That is a major entry for this group, for the new members. If you look at the previous iterations of this field just overtook everything, you know? And to have residents who are interested walking here and they don't get in close to the creek, this group has fought
Yep.
strenuously for this to be more about the creek than about the field.
And I will just complete disclosure, and we'll see it on these next slides. This field is planned to have 4 lights.
That was the next question.
2, 3, 4. We've done the lighting study. We know what the spillover is going to be. The spillover would be 5 foot behind the pole. You'd have less than 1 candle foot of light, which means you would almost have no visible light spill over 5 foot behind the pole. But when we bring forward the FDP to the board, this will be a lit field.
The lit field, is that 10 PM? Is that what, the one over at Community Park, they go
Correct.
down at 10, right?
So it's 5 feet behind the pole, but I mean, for instance, this pole right here, will it be broad and shoot out this way, or is it going to be focused enough that it stays on the field?
You can get the field lighting now where it's the footprint of the field, and then your spillover is, I can actually, well, let's get through the
Okay.
presentation, and then if
Yeah.
you guys are, if you're fine with it, I can kind of explain to you what that lighting.
We'll just,
report
and
looks
real
like.
quick, maybe we'll get to this also, but since we have it up right now, that area where it does get somewhat close, are we just talking natural buffers, or is there going to be like physical buffers, a net, a fence, anything?
Natural, really, really.
All
dense.
100% natural. Okay.
Kind of going back.
Back to these
Now we're starting to look at Bailey dogwood, the leaf alder.
things that will prevent a soccer ball from going into.
Picture what we currently have down by West Multipurpose between the soccer fields down there and Rock Creek.
Okay.
Patrick, one more thing on actually this
one here?
past slide, the one with the people in the creek.
Sure.
This question came up about a year ago, the water quality with the water coming through, grazing cattle. And do we know if we're encouraging people to get in the water, if the water quality is up to?
Right, yeah, and
Fine.
that's actually an interesting question because we did have somebody rafting in the river this past week. We're anticipating checking water quality as part of this process. If we formalize it as an amenity, we'll want to monitor it. We're currently not monitoring it, but I think if we're going to encourage people to be down in there and create play spaces, that it would be smart of us to know what that looks like.
Is that something we need to do ahead of time before we create these amenities that more or less push people towards?
No, because I think the water quality will change seasonally.
Oh, okay.
That's almost as much as a moving target of trying to determine how much water would be in there.
So it won't have a correlation because there's a specific rancher above us that,
Probably
okay.
gonna be higher in the summer and lower in the winter, just on how things grow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the good thing is that for the most part, that Coal Creek water flows through Boulder County open space, which they have to notify us if they do any open space weed spray. And that, there's agricultural grazing that's going to take place
Okay.
all over in there. But that's popped up on our radar because you'd actually be surprised at how many people want to either kayak in the creek or tube down the creek. So
The other thing I would just want us to keep in mind is people letting their dogs enter the creek, if that's something that's wants to be allowed or not allowed and thought about.
I think it's probably gonna happen regardless.
Yeah.
No, regardless of the sign, but if we're talking about water quality and things like that and people want to have their kids in it or.
If we want some public input, just put, should we allow dogs?
So as I had mentioned earlier, from staff's perspective, I've always felt like there was a lot of consternation between this group and this project. I know a lot of that kind of predates, and that's fine. I think a lot of what's come out of this project has really been spurred on by this group, which I think is good. But I really wanted to kind of bring these recommendations back before you because I think staff and Matrix worked really, really hard to try to take all the varying opinions that were out there and all the sensitivities out there. And Sandy mentioned that path being a big win. But just kind of going back through some of your recommendations all the way back from 2014, you can start to see a lot of what this group recommended finding its way into the park plan. No more synthetic turf. Define the creek corridors before we did any kind of significant building. Environmental impact study, water studies, concerned about synthetic turf seeping into the creek, especially during floods. Manicured green spaces, not synthetic. Natural open spaces to protect the integrity of the creek corridor. Moving on, that next year, really starting to look at this and recognize what it was, which is a riparian corridor with a park on either side. So how can we really kind of beef that up? How can we make a creek something amazing too, and not just talk about the park? So you guys had some really great recommendations. Hardy plantings to create the buffer to withstand future flood and erosion, foot traffic. Base the creek corridor and habitat around what's appropriate for the creek and not for the wheels. So for the field. So I think you guys had some very valid recommendations. The trail on both sides of the creek. Make sure that it's something that it's natural, but we know we're going to have these uses down there. You're going to have a bridge over it. We know there's going to be a large field there. So how can we keep it looking great? So the lighting study, again, further probably about this time last year, you guys just, again, really consistent recommendations, which helped Matrix and staff, kind of get to where we are now, which is a little bit more comfortable with the park plan. It's funny to look back, see how long some of the recommendations have. I remember.
Mike know, a lot of
Yeah.
smithing.
A lot of wordsmithing, a lot of back and forth.
I remember those were long meetings.
And we'd get a little feedback from ProStack, then we'd get a little board meeting, then we'd tie it back in together. So, but
Why is the lighting still being included? Certainly that seems to be the disconnect between OSAC's recommendations and what you just told me.
ProStack's recommendation, and what I thought I heard from the board was leave that in and it'll become a board decision at the FPP level. Are there any slides you guys want to revert back to? Do you want to take a quick peek at kind of what that lighting study looks like?
Do you have the actual, a study on how the light falls?
Yeah.
And do you know what the current composition of the nocturnal light is there and how sensitive that is to light?
We don't. They really, other than the
turtles that actually do not have any light?
To be honest, when we worked with Matrix to talk about the habitat quality, post flood, it's gotten significantly worse because all those kind of little hiding areas interior to the creek they're just gone, and even some of the nesting birds that we used to see, I think have unfortunately probably naturally moved on with the amount of development that's gone over there, just with the BVI building.
But I think with the things that you're going to bring back with the hardy plantings and things will bring, those birds and things back to the
We really
area.
wanted to make sure that we took the mentality of we want the creek to be better than how we found it. And cleaning it up, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to do it, stand on the 2nd Avenue Bridge and look towards the west and see how much healthier that creek corridor looks like now that we've gone through and cleaned it up post-flood. and just look at the opportunity, you know, and the kind of natural corridors it's created in there. It'll give you kind of a good sense of what could be accomplished. So these were just some images. These were actually, we showed these to the board last year. And then I'll actually get to the lighting study. So you can start to see how much you can kind of hone in LED lighting specific to the actual playable surface. And then Ken, going back to your comment about the buffer planting between a really active field and a riparian corridor, this is Rock Creek down at Community Park, and you can see what you can do with planting and a trail to buffer an aquatic area that's a riparian corridor with a really active field
Yeah,
next
it
to
was just hard to tell if there was enough space in that kind of narrow area for something
Right.
like that significant. But no, that's great.
Bear with me a second. I know I've got it in here somewhere. There we go. All right. And this actually, yeah, so this is a 4. Let me see if there's a. All right,
This
so-
is specifically for our field?
Right, this,
Okay.
so this would be with a 4-pole system. And I used to have a really good definition of what a foot candle was. But if you can kind of basically, it kind of is what it sounds. If you're holding the candle and every foot you move away from that candle, it's how visible that light is. So you can see, obviously, if this is the center of the field, you can see exactly the points where your light's going to be the most intense. And then you can see once you're behind those poles, you're, in most cases, less than 1 visible foot candle. A little bit of spill on the sides, but those numbers become almost nothing. So if you've driven by Community Park at night, those are pretty old lights. Those aren't LED lights. Those are probably 10 years old. They actually have a decent amount of spillage behind them. You know, you're looking just a handful of feet off the field. You have no visible impact on the ground unless you're looking in towards the field.
So is every row or column, is that a foot? Like, where we've got the black line at the edge of the.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'll clarify. I don't want to kind of quantify what I think these are. It's my understanding that they're a foot, but I'd be happy to follow up.
Yeah, so under that assumption, we would be reading this at 3 feet to the north towards the creek, we'd be less than half of.
Correct, a foot candle.
Okay.
I don't think that can be, though, because that would mean that this field is only
10 feet wide
Yeah.
by 20 feet
Right.
long.
Yeah,
So it's
no.
probably 5 feet maybe.
Yeah, there's got to
Five.
be maybe 3 feet.
It says Z equals 3 there, is that?
Yeah, I'd hate to. I'd be more than happy to kind of follow up on exactly what the.
No, but you had mentioned that isn't
Oh, there we go. Points at 30 by 30.
That's a wide field.
So. But I'd be
Okay.
more than willing to kind of follow up because it's a completely valid point that the board's going to have to really mull over is it lit or is it not lit?
And there is a difference between this study and what's being proposed, right? Because isn't what's being proposed putting the lights at the corners rather than kind of the middle of the
Yeah, I mean,
of the half?
I don't know that they'll sit exactly on the corners.
Okay, so this
It would
could actually be
It would be
realistic.
a 4-light system, which you would kind of break it down. We started with the 6-light, which was just overkill. You know, the
Mhm.
other thing to remember too is when we initially did this, there were houses right on the field. And, you know, at one point we were talking about, well, do you put the lights on top of those houses, or do those residents have to sign a waiver saying that they knew that they were going to build or live in a house? Yeah.
And now for the record, the newer members, we have a road there.
Mhm.
For some
Another
reason,
big
the
win.
Original design.
Put
didn't have a
houses
road
right,
going
yeah.
against the park. So that'll separate the houses. So they'll be across the street.
Yeah, and actually, I'm probably stepping outside here, but again, so conceptual here, so know that there's probably some wiggle room down in here. These used to be houses, and the road used to be behind it, so no parking on the park. And what's kind of transpired now is, you know, this is potentially, you know, maybe this is a hotel. You know, and you've got opportunities over in here. This is kind of that Main Street promenade that leads up. BVI's over here, medical office buildings over here. So now it feels a little bit more appropriate. The uses around the field feel a little bit more appropriate, where it's, you know, you're not playing a soccer game or a flag football game or ultimate right out somebody's back door.
Patrick, what is this space right down here currently slated for?
You know what, Kim, that's in the development, and I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I'd have to probably do a little bit of reading.
And again, I would take the green out and make it something
Yep,
else so
that's a
people
great
understand.
Well, and I.
That it's not
I think
greens.
the other recommendation is where is it manicured green versus native green?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that would help.
Yep.
Because certainly at the board level, I'm gonna be interested in lots of spaces close to the creek where you can pull a picnic blanket down, you know?
Yep.
So, I'm not a big, living south of Colton with a naturalized landscape, I'm not a big fan of unusable spaces that have weedy, well, where you can't walk on, you know, dog can't even go in there, et cetera, so.
So more manicured maybe.
Well, at least a nice mix.
Sure.
Yep.
Great, absolutely great recommendations and easy to do in the present.
Where's the seating, so the field, you're thinking about stadium seating or not, or is it just standing
Yeah.
around the field?
Nope, so seating here, some
Okay.
stairs here.
Okay.
So it is going to be in a little bit of a bowl. But what we're thinking about doing, you know, we've always had that problem of, well, this is still in the floodway. It's inevitable that at some point it's going to get flooded, no matter what we do down here. But maybe this kind of rises up a little bit. So you can also sit on this hillside and look down slightly at the field. You could sit here. You could sit here. And then the other thing that we
those are
always
really good
heard
ideas.
is making sure that you had adequate room for the teams, but the teams also weren't standing in the creek corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at seating areas, big picture, here, here. And then we also, you know, something else to kind of think about just from a kind of a, if you're a non-resident riding into town, that we talked a lot about is how cool is it if you're going to come from Louisville and ride under and you've got this kind of open, you know, so maybe some turn-off areas where people could even stop and watch activities here on the trail system.
As far as connections to other paths within town center, am I remembering correctly that it is possible to have a path that runs all the way down along, more or less where 36 is? That way it will connect to the
Yeah.
far side of town center.
Yeah, so maybe so just kind of quick update, this spur here, this trail right here
Right.
will be built this year to McCaslin. And then you've got this is the 36, the existing 36 trail.
Okay, so that's the 36 trail that
And then you'll have another trail.
stays within the
And
community.
then, yeah, I don't want to relive too much of Park 3, but for those of you that remember Park 3, we also had a trail that went around the cemetery.
Right, and that was I was trying to make that connection whether we're gonna have that trail that connects from Park 3 over to here.
Yep. And that one
So I'll
that's
make sure I'm viewing
spurring
it
up,
correctly.
that's the Dr. Cog Trail that's going in, right, up
Right here.
36? Yep.
Yep. 36 bikeway, additional trail, Louisville Golf Course is over here. Our Public Works Department did a great job coordinating the trail to be built from here to the McCaslin Underpass, and then that McCaslin Underpass goes even further up to Davidson Mesa Underpass.
Patrick, I can't remember, did, not for this part, but did a dog park eventually get slotted for town center?
For Park 3.
For Park 3,
in
on the
between-
back,
Yep.
behind BVI, kind of?
This triangular wedge.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you guys here, but I can refer over to that original park.
Sorry,
plan
I'm
if you
just
guys
asking a
wanna
question
see
because
it.
I'm seeing a lot of green, and if you don't have,
Yeah. I don't need to
So-
see anymore, but if you guys
No.
want to for
that's
reference.
fine. I just wanted to ask
What are
if
you
it got,
asking this group for general observations, or are you actually expecting them to have a resolution of support?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
What is the timeline? How fast does this need to happen? Is it
So
going?
this will go before the board initially on August 8th, then planning commission scheduled for the 16th, and then back to the board on August 22nd.
so we have to recommend tonight or not, right? Like if we want to, because our meeting won't be until the 10th.
Yeah, if we don't make a recommendation tonight, then the board won't know our position when they first see it. I guess one other clarifying question I have before we start talking about recommendations and whatnot is the actual creek. You showed us some good pictures, and there was a lot of activity in the creek. For the drop ways, I mean, are we fully embracing what we already know the desire is of people being able to use tubes and that sort of thing and going down the creek? Like,
I think the drops would actually probably discourage it.
okay.
You're thinking of drops like at Purple Park where you kind of look at them, but you don't go into them.
Right, so where there's not a clear, like Boulder Creek, there's a clear path where tubes will go, but there won't be, okay.
I think we get a lot of people who don't want a tube on Boulder Creek, and they try to come down here and realize that it's just not
Mhm.
a creek that's set up for it.
I don't have a lot of concerns about this. I think it's done a good job addressing most of our stuff. I mean, I think we would have loved to see no lights, but I don't think that's a battle we're going to win. I mean, Patrick, the field is going to be a programmed field, and we're already lacking for field space in the town. So are we anticipating that this field is going to be programmed pretty much to the maximum possible extent from the get-go? Do we have that demand?
I think the demand is there, yep.
So the lights are more or less a necessity to be able to.
I think it's an item that really is going to have to be down to the board, almost on a policy level, on how you want to program it.
I think you can still abide by any concerns about lighting. You can say still prefers no lighting, but if lighting is to occur, then establish hours, appropriate off time, or not,
Can it go,
you guys have to discuss among yourselves. Are you still generally pro no lighting, or are you not?
is 4 the minimum amount that they would do?
What did you
To
ask,
be
John?
If, for
Like, could it be
lights,
done
4
with
corners
2,
would
or
be.
could it,
I was, Sean, to follow it to that, though, we have started to look at, there are options, maybe it doesn't need to be as tall as what you see down at Williams.
Right, or
Maybe.
could it be from the, from the creek side going toward
Yeah.
the road
Yeah.
instead of going both directions?
yeah.
Very valid point.
Truthfully, looking at it now, the park part is less concerning about the lighting. Now I'm getting concerned about the hotel lighting that's gonna overlook from the other side, which I know isn't part of this, but just seeing how close it is together. We're gonna have 24, I mean, you're gonna have all-night lighting, possibly in the hotel parking, depending on how they do things.
And just kind of a quick note, we did make the specific request to try to make sure we have planting here as cars turn
Yep,
to maybe do some kind of blocking for headlight
yep.
coming this way at night.
And when that hotel comes up for a PD and whatnot, that's just something we'll have to be on top of as a committee to make sure we get in front of the board and let them know that we feel very strongly about minimizing the light pollution into the corridor.
Yeah, over to that area.
I don't think you, again, you need to come up with a recommendation as members of OSAC and still, you know, what do you as members of OSAC wish? And it's sort of like when I always advise you against worrying about the cost of something.
Yep.
You know, I say that's not your concern. And it isn't your concern. That's the concern for the board. So as members of OSAC, and the concerns you've historically expressed, how has this addressed them and which remain unaddressed, if any?
So I'm actually impressed that I think you did take a lot of our recommendations into what we've ended up here from the beginning. You know, certainly taking away the artificial turf, you know, was a big win. The two
Trails on both
trails
sides of the
on
creek,
both sides, you know, is very nice. I think
making naturalized buffers. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Bringing-
Feel free to drive it however you want, because those recommendations are at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
So that I like, that we've gotten a lot of that.
I mean, here we can start with. I mean, if we want to, we can go bullet by bullet if we really care to make sure everything was addressed. For the most part, I think we got most of it. So I mean,
I think the biggest thing left is the lighting.
Yeah.
Is how much do we feel that
What was the
is-
original objection to the lighting for some of the newbies here?
Yeah,
the
nocturnal-
Crable Mouse is like right there where that field is.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
I
this is
think the
environmental,
lighting-
not for homes or whatever
Yeah.
in the
There was-
area.
So that the habitat.
yeah, that area right there.
would be-
Okay.
So they found Preble West in open space, and then the environmental assessment looked for light habitat.
Okay.
Pre-flood, the habitat existed. Post-flood, it doesn't, but once we started that Colmar process, I mean, it kind of is what it is, but I think, to Sean's point, that there was really quality habitat in there.
And it's not there now. Not
Now
as
it's
much.
just all wet.
But as
Okay.
you bring back natural plantings and bring that buffer, I think those habitats can come back.
Well, and it brings forth the whole ecosystem. I mean, if the Preble gets reestablished there, you're going to bring predators, you're going to have owls, that sort of
Right.
thing. You're going to have the hawks. So you're going to have, I mean, the owls, nocturnal animals, a lot of nocturnal animals. We don't want to allow the lights to interfere with their habitat, was where we're really coming from.
I think the new lighting system, or at least the advances in lighting system, is pretty impressive, though. I mean, whether or not it actually achieves that, but being 10 feet off and having so little light pollution, I mean, you're not even going to be beyond really the trail there, it looks like.
So the light study, and Pat, you probably know the answer to this off the top of your head, but I'd be curious to know is, does that account for any of the natural vegetation? I would assume not. So the natural vegetation would only knock those numbers further down.
Yep.
And our lighting study, we didn't try to do car lights. We've been aware of the hotel from the get-go, but our studies didn't do anything
Yeah.
with kind of the hotel side. We did talk specifically about the planting and trying to create a healthy tree canopy. That's why you still see us listing the cottonwoods and on that tree list. Ken, actually,
Yeah.
you scroll to the slide that had the plant material.
Yep. One.
I'm actually surprised to see cottonwoods continue to be
There
there.
are.
I was just in a friend's backyard in Erie, and cottonwoods are a major problem. So if we intend to, have that program field with lights and you, during time.
It'd minimize
Yeah, the air quality goes to,
Yeah.
The golf course in Boulder is covered. Sometimes you can't even see your ball.
So what is,
Sorry, Tricia.
I was going to say, what does Williams go down at? The,
timer?
yeah, what time do they go off? Yeah, when?
Pretty sure 10,
Unless they
I
get
stare
prior
at that.
approval from,
so I know.
me.
You live, yeah.
My bedroom stares out at that. so 10
You know
o'clock.
exactly, you're like, it's 10
Yep,
o'clock.
Yep.
like maybe there's, other than Chili Fest, or, sometimes I'll get a call, hey, we didn't finish our soccer game, can you override it? But for the most part, I don't let them go past 10 at all. It happens, but it's.
Don't you have shades and curtains that you can close? and-
Sure, no, it doesn't bother me.
I know,
We-
I'm just saying.
We know when we bought it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more, it's more noise from that.
Right.
And there you just put in earplugs and you're all set.
Or music.
Yeah.
So I would say certainly we would want to limit it to 10
Right.
PM, not let it go any further than that to be consistent.
And I would get rid of vegetation that let off lots of pollen, lots of seed, lots of things that float through the air, because allergies and
Yeah.
everything else.
I mean, do you get light pollution from 36 also, or is that too high? I mean, it seems like
A little
that
bit
would.
From the sign, we made it a point as part of this, we all came out here one night and just kind of
Mhm.
cut our eye. And you get some from the signage on 36, you're starting to get some from the new ice building. Noise, kind of to your point, most of what you hear is noise from 36.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the hum.
Well, either way, with the large amount of natural buffer with all those trees, that'll certainly help with all of that.
How tall are those lights that they're proposing putting in? Are they 15 feet tall, or?
Oh,
Right now, that study was done at a height similar to Williams.
Okay.
But I think it, again, reasonable to make the request to explore lower level lighting.
Do we know how that compares to the expected height of the trees we're looking at, and whether these lights would tower over the trees or?
Yeah, again, we actually kind of looked at that, trying to judge based off the height of our current canopy out there.
Mhm.
And pretty even.
But it's not going to matter in, well, wintertime. I don't know how much they're going to use the lights at
Right.
night, but there's not going to be any leaves, so.
Yeah, you take, and again, I think some of that change is taken from synthetic to natural.
Mm.
It's, I mean, gosh, you guys know how hard it is to even use Williams in the winter.
Right.
It's probably not gonna be a park, we're not planning on clearing snow.
During the cold months.
Mhm.
Yep.
It'll probably just be more of a seasonal.
Spring,
facility,
summer,
and in the
fall.
winter, we'll kind of leave it be just like we do with baseball fields.
Okay, so I guess to summarize the points we want to make about the lights, we want to make sure that we do anything within our power to reduce the amount of light pollution outside of the field. We want to make the light posts as short as practical,
Yep.
and we want to ensure that the lighting system goes off no later than 10 p.m. Did I miss anything on that?
Did I catch that second one was the lowest level lighting possible?
That was
Yeah.
feasible, yeah,
Feasible, okay.
yeah,
Feasible.
that's like, we're not gonna say you have to keep it at 8 feet or something.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, they still need it has to be illuminated to
Yeah.
a
Yeah, it
certain
has to be,
degree.
yeah.
But it just matter how bright it has to be, you know.
Yeah,
He said the height of the light posts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The height and the direction, right, as much as you can keep it sort of focused on visibility on
away from the-
on the field and away from the,
Yeah.
Are you sort of changing the tone that you will accept the lighting, or you're still saying generally still opposed to lighting, but if it were to occur, have, because you've now been opposed to it for the past number.
I think we started to change our tone in our last recommendation as well. Oop, too far.
So I wasn't on the committee, I don't believe, but either one of those were there. I personally think that it's a necessary evil. I mean, if we want this park to be utilized, you know, I'm in favor of lighting and a controlled standard.
Right, well, that's for the board to decide, though. I mean,
Yeah.
our preference is to preserve habitat and natural space. So let the board decide that. I'm opposed to having lighting still. If need be, you know, minimal lighting, but preference still is none, in my opinion.
I think it's the same, necessary evil. I would support the lights within a limited, you know.
Yeah, so, and on our 7-8-15 recommendation, we didn't go as far to say we don't want them anymore. We said to further minimize any possible unfavorable environmental effects, we should minimize negative impacts from lighting, parking, traffic flow, et cetera. I mean, if we're going to come from a purely open space, do whatever is possibly best, then yes, we'd love to get rid of the lighting. I don't think that's a battle we can win.
No,
And I'm
right.
not sure we should. I mean, we somewhat lose credibility when we pick battles we can't win. I think if we try to make realistic recommendations to the board, we're heard better. So I think we can even start it off with more or less echoing our exact verbiage from that we want to minimize any unfavorable environmental impacts. And to do that,
Well, look at your third one there.
Mhm.
You recommend that the final plan consider and minimize detrimental impacts of lighting.
exactly. So we're more or less echoing that and then getting even more specific with the 3 bullets that we already discussed.
And then I would, you know, obviously the transportation people have to weigh in on safety and stuff, but also say with that bridge, what is the lighting coming across that bridge? Like how lit up is that?
Including.
Yeah, including the bridge structure, yeah, like, because that,
The Haslam Bridge.
yeah, because we,
Marcia.
well, because the bridge is new to me. I don't know about you
Mine.
guys.
No,
No, it's been there.
that bridge.
Been there, yeah, I forgot about it. I mean, it was there, but then you forget about it when you see it all together.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So when you were talking about not having the lights to preserve the nocturnal animals that live there, had you thought about the safety issue from the accessibility, that you're going to have a lot more people walking there, and that if it's dark, it could be more dangerous, just like Boulder Creek is at night, and people are trafficking it. So the lights, you know, could be a plus for safety.
Mhm.
Is there going to be path lighting?
Yeah, that's-
Is path lighting planned?
Not lighting, not currently planned.
Okay, so that wouldn't be an issue then, because only lighting that was there was for
Okay.
the field.
Most of our paths are not lit throughout town.
But it's going to be a huge park, so, I mean,
Yeah, there may be a,
That might be something, I guess. We haven't looked at that as far as safety on the path, but most of the other parks actually do plan to close at dusk, and they're not lit
I
for,
can bring that up at the board level.
I mean, I see people moving into homes and wanting to come and walk around that area, and if you don't have lighting there, it's going to be dangerous. People aren't going to feel safe there, long-term, you know, in the long-term plan. Does that make sense?
Well, it particularly makes sense because of the more urban environment.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of green space there, so people may be seeking out that green space to walk their animals, et cetera, their pets.
Have a stroll at night, yeah, exactly.
well, you're right, if you have the restaurant right on it, people might want to go then and walk around after.
What I don't want you guys to do is get too far afield, because this request for recommendations is a massive thing tonight.
Mhm.
Because you've just seen it. And as a board member, that always annoys me, that, you know, you this stuff, but the deadlines are such that they are what they are, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think, to your point, we can stay close to this one we recommended in July of last year, which says, really, we didn't out and out say no light. We just want it to be as non-detrimental as possible. As far as the field lighting, I think we haven't thought of your part, and maybe that's something that more
Well,
can get added.
I think we didn't think of it because it wasn't ever in the plan. So
Yeah.
we were just looking at what was proposed and making comments based on what was proposed.
Mhm.
So have you put language in this yet that says you support the increased focus on the Coal Creek corridor and support the paths on both sides and you,
The increase in the vegetation and the buffers, I mean,
that you appreciate.
Yeah.
It's valuable to add.
And appreciate that any sports field will be natural turf, not artificial.
I think that you guys have done a really good job of highlighting the creek corridor, and it doesn't look like, previous plans really were focused around the fields, and this really is focused around the creek corridor being the, one of the amenities in that area and enjoying it.
Not bad.
One thing that struck me, so now with the increased focus on the creek corridor, you want to make sure you have enough park benches, whatever, and there's no quantity with you. So I don't know if you want to say adequacy, a healthy supply, healthy number of benches and natural
Seating.
Seating, it can be boulders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seating, either benches and or
Boulders. I think the water
Natural
quality
resting
that was
places.
brought up, to make sure that if we're going to encourage people to, step into the creek, that water quality is looked at.
While we're talking, just one quick question that popped up, Patrick. One thing that changed from the old plan we were looking at was there was that playground area. We've lost the playground completely.
Yeah, it's kind of, so, again, kind of pre-restaurant being on that site.
Right.
It went from kind of playground to then parking lot to now
Yep.
restroom.
Mhm.
This area in here would still potentially lead itself to some kind of smaller playground that interacted well with the creek. But currently, we're not showing it.
Is 3 got a playground? No, or the Center Park has a playground? Where are the?
Yeah, Village Green has a playground, and then Park 3 also had a small kind of medium-sized playground.
A thing I'm going to key in on this is my first look at this too. This is Promenade, right? And before the Promenade actually sort of created a grand entrance here to the field, and that's where that natural terrace seating was, along there in the yellow plan. And we worked pretty hard on that. Now, there is not, this is nothing other than to confuse you guys further, because I'll take care of it at the board level. There's just not a natural entrance, it doesn't seem anymore.
Yeah.
Now the field sort of exists with lack of a direct connection with Promenade. So, but I'll take that up, it doesn't have to. And I still am very cynical about whether or not we have enough parking close to, as I understood you, Patrick, we're gonna have parking here, but that's also a drop-off.
That's
So-
probably more drop-off, yep.
Good. So where are these people?
Is there
where they
parking on that
are,
slanted?
where are they gonna park?
You'd have parking here, you would have some level of parking here.
Yeah. It's definitely in
then I believe, last conversations I had was some level of parking here and then.
And then pavilion, so to me, to have this pavilion up here with all that parking, with all that concrete surrounding it, it depends really on it. You don't want to feel like you're having your picnic right by.
Is that the
gas
pavilion
station.
or is that bathrooms?
That would
It's
be more
pavilion.
of, just kind of a shelter slash bathroom.
So, I
So
thought you
it's
said bathroom up there.
Not like Louisville Park where it's big and you could have a party under it?
That one probably not.
Is there one?
Not in this park plan, there is not.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, I thought I had interpreted that as more of a gathering area, and I thought, really, they
Yeah.
were.
I will say that we opted for more parking in this plan. We can definitely, I think, minimizing or taking kind of away parking or coming down here would definitely be an option.
I don't think taking away parking is a good thing.
But I think having a.
There is parking at
covered
BVI.
structure would be a really good thing.
Huh?
Having a covered structure.
There is going to
That's
be-
probably, 30 by 30, so not huge,
There's
but
gonna
also
be
not tiny.
A covered structure in this way, and it's being relied.
I think you're talking about a covered structure like a pavilion for
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
eating
you
under
mean
or.
Pavilion.
Yeah,
gathering.
yeah.
gathering structure.
I think that's really more pro-Stag's charter. I suppose
Okay.
they're gonna come in on
Sure.
all that covered structure, so the amenities. This is, OSAC's general, charge on this whole project has to do with the natural spaces. That doesn't ever preclude anybody from commenting on what the heck you want to comment on. But I've got to believe that ProStack is probably going to really talk about amenities in their review of this next Wednesday. And again, this is a good reason why your leadership or the membership certainly advised to attend the ProStack meeting so that you guys can feedback.
And then just kind of quick follow-up, because you guys will remember we did do a ton of work up front on the sandstone and the seating here. A couple of things that ended up changing that was when
The location.
when the restroom and parking lot here, that initially was going to be proposed as retaining wall, which took the seating away. And then we started to feel like it became very, very, very cost prohibitive in terms of trying to create that seating. So right now, we are just showing the grass seating in these areas. And then you'd have you'd have your run out, a walkway, and then a retaining wall.
So to that point, I think one of the things I like about this design is there's a lot of green and, unstructured space, and I'd like to see that remain more so than adding more amenities in. Like, if you remember, just south of that, that's going to be a very dense urban sort of feel. So I think, having this be much more green and not programmed on, the parcel one, I think is a good thing.
Trish's point, is this just a size
Yeah.
indicator?
And it's going to be level, but it's more of a pickup kind of thing, like
That
you
would
can
be,
go out,
yeah,
you with a group
little
of
guy
friends.
feel.
Yeah.
Is it actually even going to be lined, or the line isn't?
No.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
and you couldn't, a couple things, you couldn't put a backstop down in there because you'd have flood obstruction. And kind of, when we were talking about playground, we
Mhm.
definitely did, we're now starting to look at this also as a maintenance, when you get to that FDP level of a maintenance. So lots of conversations about, is playground equipment a flood obstruction? What kind of surfacing do you put down there? We were very, very specific not to put crumb rubber on the turf field. So for us, it didn't feel quite right to put in an poured-in-place rubber surface. But you're in a floodway, so if you do pea gravel or you do engineered wood fiber, even a small flood event, we lose that material downstream. So things like backstops, play equipment, those, now it starts to transition from, could you do it? Yeah. does it make sense from a maintenance and long-term cost perspective to do it? Maybe not.
I look at that as like the field that's next to South Park, South Pool. You see a lot of people do pick up things there, which they might do similar here, or small like rec league practices for like the first grade and kindergarten use that because it's a small field.
Yeah, going forward though, I make the recommendation that there's so much sensitivity in this town about baseball diamonds that this can be a little misleading to that group that they're going to be getting a baseball.
Yeah, and they're not, yeah.
So I would probably remove this from future presentations, but verbally say it would be large enough to accommodate a little T-ball type of thing or whatever, because just as the proponents of this sport say, yeah, we're having, this field, right, we're getting that, it is logical for certain residents to assume that that means we're getting something there. So if the intent is to keep that open, I think that it's dangerous, represented when we don't have that. And then Tricia, you want this group to make a recommendation to this group that actually be preserved, or as
That's my feeling, that we preserve that is green space, not something that someone's gonna look and say, oh, let's put a big playground in there, or let's add things that it stays more.
Well, it seems like that's the design, to focus on the creek rather
Yeah.
than the structure,
Creek
so I
center.
like that also.
Sandy brings up a great point. We've been showing baseball as an image because at various meetings, we were getting pressure to show that you could put a baseball field in there. Very easy to take it right back out. It is just open green space.
Okay.
So they're really, because I interpreted it, seeing it, that this is another place where you could play baseball. And I do think that's how it's going to be perceived by a lot of people, that this is going to be someplace to put it.
Yeah, it would be smaller than the T-ball field at Elmhurst. So I don't, maybe T-ball, but my guess is that it would be almost unplayable if you just pick up. We'll definitely make it out and take that off.
So Trish has expressed her opinion regarding keeping that open. How does the rest of the group think?
I agree with the sentiment.
I agree.
Maybe you do want to language.
Patrick, have you been tracking these comments by chance?
The Part 1 green space be both.
Maintained in that kind of, like, I like that there's the trees in between them and
Yeah,
nice, and you can kind of go
I think
off
the-
and.
I think the theme on one unprogrammed green space is.
We would like to maintain that.
That's in
yeah.
there, yeah. There's-
So do we have
Yeah.
our recommendations, because it's
Yeah.
4:09.
Yeah, so Patrick, can you read back what we've noted to see if there's anything we need to add?
All right, so item number 1, do appreciate the changes reflected in previous recommendations. Recognize the need to reduce light pollution, install the lowest light pole height possible, and limit lighting past 10 p.m. Need to look at lighting from a safety perspective. Need to look at vegetation that doesn't spread allergens such as cotton or seed. Need to make sure adequate seating for the amount of use is in the area. Need to consider water quality. Need to remove baseball image from park number 1 and maintain park number 1 as open green space.
I think that caught all of it. I'm trying.
Yeah, go back to that first one. Yes.
Appreciate the changes in the current plan that reflect previous recommendations.
Can we say?
Changes to the current plan that reflect OSAC's
Commitment to the Creek Court.
requests for, there's a little ambiguity. I'm not a professional writer, so,
So,
pardon. I
do
don't
we want,
to
is this
ask-
gonna become the is this gonna become your?
I think we can make
recommendation?
this a recommendation.
So let me kind of
I just want to make sure that the first sentence is clear, that OSAC appreciates the adoption, whatever, its recommendations for more of a Coal Creek, of a creek focus.
A corridor-centric design or something like that.
Coal Creek corridor centric design.
Can I just add one more bullet point? We want to make sure that everything that's green space is green, and anything that's not is not green. So the hotel space should not be green, so it doesn't mislead people.
Presentation.
Yeah. If we're taking the baseball field out, we should take
The other
take it.
non-green.
Yeah.
out.
So you want that in your recommendation, so the board will see it as an FPP. We absolutely noted, do we want that in the recommendation?
I don't know, we have to put that in the recommendation, but
Oh,
just making sure
absolutely.
you
Just
know.
note it.
And I have it noted
Okay.
to delineate, I also have to note in there to make sure that sodded green space is a different color than
Okay.
green space.
Yep.
And I have those absolutely noted as presentation items, for sure.
Perfect.
So kind of quickly going back, OSAC appreciates the adopted recommendations that reflect the Coal Creek-centric design. Do we want to add in something based off of previous recommendations? OSAC appreciates the adoption of recommendations, previous recommendations?
It's based off our
Previous
previous recommendations.
Adoption of its previous recommendations
Yeah.
for more of a Coal Creek centric
Centric.
design. And you could get lofty and say, maximizing the unique, what did we use, you know.
But we called it a natural resource,
This is a
right?
gem.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
the.
In all caps, dash, this is.
I'm not feeling for it.
All right. So then after that, how did we transition?
You know, my guess is we do, OSAC appreciates the adoption of its previous recommendations for more Coal Creek-centric design and further recommends
That lighting.
that, you know,
and-
You could say that lighting be treated very sensitively,
Yeah.
with all the things, and that part one remain non-programmed
Green space.
green space.
OSAC appreciates the adoption of its previous recommendation for a more Coal Creek-centric design and further recommends the design for part two, reduce light pollution, consider installation of lowest light pole height possible, and limit lighting past 10 p.m. Further design should also look at the need for lighting.
Can we say prohibit lighting past 10 p.m.?
Yeah. I have limit, I can go prohibit.
I think that's what we'd rather go for, right?
Yeah, we want it shut off,
Yeah.
you know.
How about we do, and look at path lighting from a safety perspective? Does that
Yeah.
capture it?
Yeah,
Low level.
Low
Low
level
level
path
path
lighting.
lighting.
yeah.
Yeah, for,
Yeah.
And
for
I'll
safety
use,
reasons.
Consider instead of,
Yeah.
considerations for vegetation. When considering vegetation, species should be identified that limit the spread of
Allergens.
allergens.
And annoying cotton.
Get rid of the cottonwood.
I don't know, are you allergic to it, or is it just annoying?
It's, some people are allergic. Mine is, sometimes you've been standing, it's been really bad this year. It's been floating through the air.
Yeah.
You're almost like, is it snowing?
You go outside with a drink and you have 3 cotton balls in your drink by the time you're done.
Mhm.
Looks like the only other bullets we need to probably incorporate are considerations for seating, water quality.
Was that the seating around the corridor benches and natural?
Yeah.
I just had quickly captured adequate seating for the amount of use in the corridor.
Yeah, that's more, I think, also your benches and boulders to sort of, as you're walking the trail, spots to serenely rest, right?
Adequate seating and resting
Yeah.
places.
Yeah, so we further recommend ensuring that there's adequate seating and resting areas along the corridor, as well as
The field.
the
Yeah.
the Corridor Creek and Field, and as well as testing as needed of the water quality
Yep.
in the creek.
Do you want me to keep in there for the amount of use, or can we take out for the amount of use?
As a non-voting person. Not necessarily. Did you want to say and adequate, adequate flows, do what it can to assure adequate water flows within the creek if possible? Do you want to address the quantity of the water in the creek?
I'm not sure that's something we want to address right now. I think that's outside the purview of the design. The design itself is going to focus the water
Yeah.
to the maximum extent
Yeah, I don't know that
possible.
we have to do it to here. I think it's something, though, that we should be thinking about
I'll
as
bring
we.
it up at the board level
Yeah.
and see whether or not we can control, we can actually divert,
Mhm.
keep something in spec going there.
I think we had a public session meeting where Gladys she was here, and she mentioned during that, either that meeting or during board meeting, that she knows of people that have rights where the town could work with them to try and get more water flow coming down the creek.
Yeah, I think that was also the meeting where historically it has been that there's been more water there and perhaps there's some diversion going on.
I remember her
That's-
saying it specifically, though.
Yeah. And we don't just want a mud bed. That's like some way to keep it,
Would it be
doesn't-
acceptable if I say considerations should be made for low-level safety lighting instead of considerations should be made for low-level path lighting from a safety perspective?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that's just a safety lighting along paths.
And what I might suggest is I'll start to take these snippets, wordsmith them a little bit, and then kick them right back out to the group.
I mean, I think we could probably vote on it. I mean, we have the bulk of what's there, it's just wordsmithing, so,
I think that's smart, otherwise it.
Yeah,
yeah,
Increasingly late.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think we
So
can,
just to quickly before you vote, I want to make
Yeah.
sure we captured it all. OSAC appreciates the adoption of its previous recommendations for a more Coal Creek-centric design. Further recommends the design for Park 2 consider reduced light pollution, the installation of the lowest light pole height possible, and prohibit lighting to 10 p.m. Consideration should also be made for low-level safety lighting along paths. Considerations also need to be made when selecting plant species. To consider species that limit the spread of allergens and cotton. And then we've got, I need to fit in there somehow, the adequate seating and resting areas along the creek corridor and the preservation of Park 1 as a green space.
I think we've got it all
And
captured.
what I may also recommend and throw out to you guys is the recommendation of Part 1 being green space is a whole separate recommendation that stands on its own.
As a whole separate paragraph? Or-
As just, I think we can almost make the two recommendations or two separate lines.
Would they vote on them separately, or if it's just two paragraphs?
I'd say that
You could do it either way. You could vote on them two separate recommendations or at least two separate paragraphs. I think that they're very powerful.
let's try to do it just.
Part 1 stands and Part 2 kind of stands.
I think we can do it as one recommendation, but just two separate
Okay.
paragraphs, because it's all within the purview
Yeah.
of this design.
Yeah, I don't want the Part 1 preservation of green space to get lost at kind of the bottom flow of a previous statement.
Okay. So I suppose then we move to make the recommendation as stated to be wordsmithed over the next few days and officially submitted. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And I will make a note of Matt's.
Yep, I had to take off.
That'll be reflected. So it'll be in your first recommendation on trails, it'll be included in second
Yep.
recommendation on parks. Right?
Yep. Okay. Transitioning real quick. The equestrian event is something we've been talking about and kicking around for a little while. Sean, you want to give a quick just summary of where it stands or where?
Oh, yeah. So there has been some discussion back and forth over some period of time about, at one point, we were talking about having it for Trails Day, having a horse, basically. And we decided not to do that because there were liability issues that we didn't want to get into that time, so we decided that might be a better idea to postpone it to have its own event, making kind of its own equestrian clinic where people learn how to, ride a horse, tack a horse, et cetera, how you care for a horse, et cetera. So I think where it was left at was we were going to see what could be handled for liability and waiver forms, and go from there. So I'm not sure anyone really understands how much it would cost for liability insurance for a day or half a day for 2 people, 2 horses, and then, having roughly 14 people attend a clinic to learn over that period of time all these different things. I know that, Patrick, you've been involved with some of these conversations, obviously.
And actually, I've got a bit of an update after speaking with Kendra.
Okay.
Oh, you did get a chance to talk to
Yeah,
Kendra.
no, and I know that she and Jim were going to try to connect at some point over planning commission. But from the attorney's perspective, definitely doable. She was aware of the provision, I think, that Jim brought up, that horse owners are covered under a certain
Current-
insurance.
Right.
It's now just getting verification that he's part of that and has that coverage, and then I think we're pretty much good to go.
Okay.
Wait, so are you
now
saying-
it's just maybe a little bit of us needing some kind of follow-up documentation from Jim. That he's a horse owner, they're his horses, that it's covered under this, and then I think we had looked at maybe a fall date, if I remember.
It was mid-October, I believe.
And we were at, I think by kind of the time we were looking, maybe using the Rock Creek Trail starting over at the basketball court in Indiana and Colton. Is that
The
what we were
Richmond?
kind of-
It was this,
that the
whatever,
Richmond property?
Richmond.
Yeah,
It's
the
that
Richmond 15, so,
Right.
yeah.
That whole.
Wait, so did I follow you that we might not have even need an expenditure for insurance then if he's already covered under?
Correct.
Oh, wow, okay.
And there's not going to be any problem with him being the chair of the planning commission, and no.
I chatted with Kendra about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and this is all, she now has some dedicated time where she's been a little bit more accessible, and she and I sat down and talked about it and looked at really kind of what we had talked about with the bowl at Chili Fest, is these things exist, we just need to figure out the kind of paperwork trail to make sure that it's all on the up and up, so if a kid did get hurt or somebody got hurt, that everything's in place and documentation's there.
Right.
And so you're looking at it that it's a sign-up event, not a show-up event?
Yeah, it's not a show up,
Okay.
it's not a pay-per ride kind of thing. No, we're
Okay.
trying to make this a little more
More
interesting, more
okay.
focused, and something that people might want to do, like we
Yep.
do it again in the future maybe, or grow it somehow.
So I saw that he was thinking like 14 people for like maybe the entire time. Do you think it would be possible that maybe because he was blocking 2 hours, is that? what he was kind of
Yeah, I mean, again, I've had a hard time getting hold of him.
Gotcha.
Because he's in trial right now, he's a lawyer, so he does that.
Understandable.
But yeah, I actually have a meeting set up with him next Wednesday, him and his daughter actually,
Oh,
to
awesome.
discuss this in detail. So,
So now that we're past all liability issues, that was my biggest concern, just making sure we could get
That was
beyond that.
huge, yeah.
So I don't think I have any concerns. I mean, it's going to be a lot more intimate than any of our other events since we have to limit it to such a small amount of people.
Yeah, and the reason you want to do that, again, we
Oh.
don't want, it's not like, just a side event that people can
No,
just
it
do.
falls under our
Right. It's a
education
program,
thing, so
right?
we
It's more of a
have.
programs,
Yeah.
learning experience.
I mentioned to Allison too, about we're trying to track down some information from the county on, kind of the hierarchy of trail use.
Mhm.
Horse, people who use yield to horse riders and horse riders,
Yeah.
Yep,
Because I
they
do
had
think
some
that
great
they're-
magnets at
Yeah, I
the
think-
Trails Day of
Yeah.
I
that,
think
how
that's
you
a good
yield.
way to continue the message that you guys have from Trails Day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's another good way to pull the county in.
All right. Well, I think we're kind of good to keep going on that then, I mean, especially now that the insurance stuff's taken care of.
Yeah.
So do you just want to, when you meet with, after you meet with Jim and those guys and just report back out to the committee on where we stand? And
Yep.
I don't think we have any other objections. Anybody have any concerns about this? Cool. All right, well, we'll definitely make sure this doesn't be the last topic on the next meeting, so we can talk about it more in depth and
Right.
get this fully scheduled then. Awesome. Updates and look aheads real quick before we all take off.
I'll go over them really, really quickly. Allison mentioned that you guys have an interest in starting to see concept plans.
So that is some,
Yeah, the two concept plans that are out there that I believe have already been reviewed by the board would be the Anderson property and the Zaharias property.
yep.
I'll look into the schedule of those and maybe have something similar, a shorter presentation, so you guys are aware that those two items are coming up at your next meeting, as well as any others.
That would be great. And just so everyone here knows, Zaharias, they came back for a second time with their concept plan. We spoke at public comment the first time they came and really pushed for increased open space, and they listened to that big time and came back with a much better proposal from an open space perspective. They added
Around the reservoir.
a lot more buffer around the reservoir, just over 4 acres of open space total. None of us were able to go speak at the Anderson property concept plan. I watched it afterwards and was disappointed with the amount of open space there. And I think there's improved opportunities for trail connectivity, but it didn't sound like the board was necessarily thrilled either. So I think they're going to be coming back with.
The great thing about Zaharias as well, they want interaction
Yeah.
with the open space committee. So you could actually perhaps invite them to a future meeting,
Mhm.
preferably in the near future, before they sign, seal, and, put that FDP together.
I think that's a great idea.
Yep.
That's really a nice thing.
Yeah. Can you ask, Patrick, can you
Sure.
ask Allison to reach out to them to either come to the August, August is probably the best time for them to come if they can. The way the timing works with
Yep.
everything.
That was all I had on concept plans.
Does everyone know what we're referring to?
Oh,
when we say
yes. I
Zacharias
don't.
and Anderson?
I know where
Oh,
Zacharias is.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Zacharias.
You're always thinking of the new member,
So this
Sean.
is
You're so
88.
good. Get your map off the wall, Sean.
That's
Well,
what
I
the
was gonna say,
reservoir is over there.
we could
by,
pull it up on the big screen.
So here's the roundabout,
Okay.
and Rock Creek Circle, or Rock Creek 88th comes, and then there's that little stoplight here that goes
Do you
nowhere.
have-
36 right there.
Yeah.
It goes over 36.
88.
Here, why don't we just refer to, I love taking this
Yeah,
off the wall.
so this is
Sean loves that.
36.
That's his
This
map
is
that
the
he comes off the
horizons.
wall
So
with.
instead of looking at a little
Oh,
tiny.
Oh, yeah, there you
Oh.
go. Thank you.
So Zacharias is right, thank you, right here, and then Anderson's right over there.
Okay.
Now, Anderson is actually owned by Rock Creek Capital too, right? Same people that own Town Center, according to the Boulder County, the Boulder County property, they own it.
No, I don't
Oh,
know.
so
I
it's,
don't know.
it's west
Does
of
the assessor
36?
say it's?
Is it?
Yes.
West.
Rock Creek
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Ranch Capital.
How do you see the reservoir? Where can you see the reservoir?
Just on 88. Do
Yeah.
you know where, you ever take 88 over to Dillon?
Yeah,
It
all the
dead
time.
ends at Dillon. So right there,
So I
that
can
little
show it to you.
water.
The
you
water-
see
No, I'm
Oh.
assuming
right
that,
there.
yeah, if
Oh,
it's on
okay.
there.
And
Okay.
then you go right
I'm
over
thinking,
36.
yeah.
and
Into
I
right
wasn't
there.
aware
Yeah.
Yeah.
who owned it.
So
I
then,
guess I was not even assuming.
Oh, I
Right
know,
there.
okay, I know, before the high school,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is 88, here's the high school over here.
Oh, okay, I
Yep,
gotcha.
here's the light and here's the
I'm sorry.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
Thanks, thank you.
And the Anderson property will actually, they were talking about connections directly into town center and that sort of thing. So for us, we definitely want to make it known and communicate it at some point in the future that we'd like to see increased emphasis on trail connectivity, increased green space and open space in their area.
No, I take that back. It says Superior Rock Creek LLC, so it's not right.
Thank
Yeah, you're welcome.
All kinds of.
Damn,
Yeah.
moving and shaking.
So are they working with developers, those two
Those
properties?
are individual developers who
In-
brought it to the board.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You can have in your minutes about Anderson, that having listened to that presentation, you would really request the board do just like you did if you want any comments regarding Anderson.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I think Patrick was writing something else down, so you need to repeat that.
we just want to add an increased emphasis on trail connectivity and increased trails and increased green space and open space within the property as well.
When Anderson is here.
Yeah.
So this was discussed at the last board meeting?
Two
Two board
ago.
meetings.
So
ago.
we could actually review the video of it?
Yeah.
See, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not imminent, so.
Yeah.
They haven't come back with a update to that or
Yep.
anything. 4th of July event.
Fourth, that was huge. We
Yeah.
ran out of everything.
Yeah, that's always a good event.
We were kind of, talking over, I think we were probably between 7,000 and 8,000.
Jesus.
Definitely the biggest one that I've been a part of in like 6 years being here.
5,000 pancakes, I read somewhere.
It was, we were out. I mean, Matt Rarick and I, an hour into the event, went and bought everything that could make a pancake.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Gluten-free, whatever. If it looked like a pancake, we.
We had good, there were several of us at the booth and we had good coverage coming through.
Set up on the fly.
That's awesome.
What's up, Paul? Yeah. Food grade buckets.
Garden hose.
Home Depot bucket.
Yeah, the volunteers and the kids and the staff that works to mix it, you're literally covered from head to toe. We have a separate crew that cleans it up, and you're covered from head to toe.
That's awesome.
I drew short end of the stick and I had to do dishes. It was almost 3.5 hours of scrubbing.
Oof.
So
Wow.
it's always, we get a good kick out of who draws the short
That's
end
what
of the
the
stick.
team
Yeah.
leadership council is the dishes.
Jeff and Paige again continues to be really successful.
Real quick before we go on to that,
Oh.
Trish was starting to talk about it. We had great interactions at our booth at 4th of July, Allison made sure that we had the maps that showed our new trails, specifically addressed to the public, that those are being planned and we're actively seeking input from the public. And I was there for the second half and we didn't get any negative comments at all. Did you guys get any in the first half?
No.
Everyone's incredibly supportive of these trails.
Did you have lots of traffic at your booth?
Yeah.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah, we did. They also, I mean, all the committees, the town committees were together. So there was a lot of traffic too for the Eldorado K8 park and.
Yeah, I would say having that map, the big poster board map though, drew people's eyes.
Right,
So I
yeah.
think pretty much.
And we were in a
everyone-
great location. We did say we wanted that location.
Oh, yes.
Again.
That was the next.
Because
location.
other times we've been in the back and we were in a much better, near the food and near water and.
Well, I
That's
think
good to
it's
hear.
a sentence reflecting that there was support, community support expressed for the
Mhm.
expedited
Yep.
trail
Yep.
plan should be in your minutes.
Yep.
And that echoes everything else that we've done community outreach as well. At National Trails Day, we did the exact same type of outreach and again, received nothing but support, not a single negative comment on any of those trails. Arbor Day, you discussed
Same
it.
thing. Yep.
Yeah. This
And
one
we'll
we've
be
had-
out there for Chili Fest
Good
as
to
well.
document all that.
Yep. Okay. Jeff and Paige?
The recap on Jeff and Page, again, sounds really, really good. Kind of, that 220 to 250 range.
Nice.
It's a great way to get the kids and families involved. So I keep thinking the numbers are going to dwindle because this is maybe the third or fourth time we've done it, and they keep
Never
hold
does.
steady.
No.
So it's a good event.
Yep.
And then couple updates. Tori's putting together a trail maintenance volunteer project for July 30th. She's still working on some trails locations. And then I just want to thank everybody that helped us spread the word on the bike park cleanup. I don't know, did you guys end up going down in the 95-degree heat?
Me and my sons went down and
That's awesome.
dug weeds out of bowls and moved, dirt, and we had a good, we were there for a couple of hours. We were there for the whole event.
How many
and
people turned up?
I think there was 12 of us.
Yep.
Oh.
So 12.
Short notice, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
and
Okay.
You plant stuff in the spring, and then you're kind of at the mercy of the spring weather, and we were pretty determined to try to get this one to go, and Tori's got some good ideas on maybe making some tweaks and changes to that bike park and getting it back,
Yep.
adding
We
some
had,
features.
I was there from OSAC, there was a number of ProStack members, and there was a couple of members just from the community who came down and helped.
Why
So-
was it such short notice to get people notified?
Well, we had sent out a ton of advertisement, and just, we weren't getting any response.
Oh, okay,
And,
okay.
I normally don't try to pepper these guys too much to beg and plead, but we really wanted this one to go because we've been trying. We know there's
The other
interest.
two were called off due to weather, so
Oh,
this was
okay.
the first one that
Oh.
actually was gonna
Yeah,
get to
we
go.
started all the way back in
Yeah.
March or April.
Oh, okay, okay.
But, and my boys rode it later in the afternoon after it
Good.
dried. We had to bring them back
I
down.
wanted to update you on Rocky Flats. Patrick and I actually, and town manager, at the request of the lead on the flat grant. So he's a Department of Transportation employee, asked to meet with us about possible alternative trail alignments around Rocky Flats. And that, it was very nice meeting because looks like he's realized the value of no matter what goes through Rocky Flats, if anything does, to have an alternative alignment that would involve Town of Superior trails, and he's excited about actually connecting up Single Tree all the way up to 36 trail, and just as another way to utilize the Greenway Trail. So, and some of this occurred, Patrick like Matt suggested, alignments along 128 and whatnot, if this occurs, it may mean federal monies to develop some of this. So that was a great thing. And then thereafter, I met with him and members of the Rocky Flats technical group who testified in front of you about what a sampling protocol would look like to sample the safety of any trail that might go through Rocky Flats. So we're definitely at the table, and I'm very impressed with. It's one thing for us to call him and say, "Wouldn't you like to meet with us?" But he said he called us and really wanted to meet with us, which is very positive.
So he was still talking alternatives, or not alternatives, but a trail in addition to going through Rocky Flat. It's not substituting the trail.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, I think we've been successful at
Raising awareness.
telling him, at just percolating that idea.
Brett, he was great, because he's definitely looking at it from a really fresh set of eyes, fresh perspective. He had information that we were unaware of the grant. We had all had this understanding that the grant only applied if you were on federal lands, and maybe that's not the case. So it did get some clarifying points from him.
He's a breath of fresh air, I
Yep.
have to tell you, in a federal capacity, because the other employees are pretty hard and fast in their views, and he really is eager to understand all the opportunities.
Awesome.
And I think kind of safe to share too that Superior wasn't alone in the viewpoint. There seems to be some consistency from Westminster, Bloomfield, up at us, both Boulder County, pump the brakes a little bit. So.
Great. All right. Did anybody have anything else? All right. We're adjourned.
Completely unrelated note, there's a sinkhole forming on 30, Huron Peak. Do you guys have a cone I wanted? It's shot, a little sinkhole, a pond, but it's more of a sinkhole. Where they did the repair, right up on my neighbors. No way. Yeah, it just showed up today. My husband thinks that it's a big 2-foot hole. I shot an email to Alex, but I'm just wondering if I should get a cone and stick a cone over it, because someone's gonna go over and get their wheels stuck in it.
Yeah, let me,
I could just throw it out there, at least tonight on top of it.
meet you.
Yeah,
So this is your second or third?
I always like that, I wanna go playing on them. They actually do, I don't know if they're supposed to, but that'll be so cool. Cool. Great. Thanks, Joe. See you later.
Let's take a quick peek, because it'll either be us or urban drainage, so let me.
Yeah, you can do it.
All right, let's see,
Oh,
so.
wait, let me,
I don't
Oh,
think
you're
it's the
fine.
Torrey's
No, no,
Peak
I
one,
pulled it
it's
down.
the, I think it's the one next to it, the Castle Peak.
So we're, all right, so here's Colton. Don't worry, Sean, I can stand it up in the morning. I've got a meeting in here in the morning.
So it's Rock Creek Circle and Castle Peak.
It's gotta be one of these two.
Yep. Yeah, this is.
Urban drainage.
Yeah.
Which one on east or west?
Well, I'm pretty
The one that they tried to scum out last year?
That one, that's.
So on this side,
Wait, oh, no, I'm sorry, we're going this way, it's this one,
this one,
it's that one,
urban drainage.
okay.
I can give those guys a heads up.
And it's, the urban drainage doesn't do this one?
They do both.
Oh, they do both, yeah, so they should go out there and look at them.
So urban drainage does these waterways.
Okay.
Town maintains these waterways.
Oh, okay. Okay.
These are, if it's part of a larger drainage system, which these are, they'll maintain.
Okay.
And then that's why you're seeing, we'll chemically treat these, they tend not to.
Okay.
All right, that's,
So I need a cone.
yeah, let's figure this out.
And I guess, I shot Alex an email, but.
Yeah, Alex
he's
is presenting the DDI in New Mexico this week.
Oh, well.
So I will,
So you, whoever is replacing him, it's right in front of 36.
you know what, it only works on my, it's only, so I can write on my computer. What's your address?
So it's in front of, on 3574
Okay.
here on Peak, and it's, but it's about, it's in front of my neighbors, which is like 36 on the,
Give me your address one more time. No, thanks.
3574. Yep. And so they did something last summer, like they dug in there to get to the piping, if you remember.
Yeah,
They
oh, yeah.
come out, and
Oh, yeah.
where they patched it, now it's
Dropped.
today. Like, my husband came in right before I came here and was like, "Is a 2-foot pothole?"
Are you heading home right now?
Yep.
So if you see me milling around outside your house, you know that's what it is. Because what I'll do is I'll find, we've got it going somewhere.
Well, yeah, I just figured because someone's gonna get their,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
wheels stuck in it, and then it's not gonna be great.
And I'll let Ed in Public Works know. He's the one that Alex would call anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I don't think Alex I mean, like I said,
No,
it was
he's-
after hours anyways, like.
yeah, and
I was
he's,
like, I'll go in here anyways, and who knows, maybe someone's called the police by now or something, yeah, I don't know what people do, you know?
You know, we have an on-call number. And those Public Works.
Well, when my husband came in, he said it to me, so I shot Alex a quick email, because he said
Yeah.
pothole. When I
Awesome.
left and got in the car,
And you're saying it's more sinkhole than pothole?
no, it's
right?
sinkhole. It's a sinkhole.
Yeah,
Because I
that's-
looked at it and there's nothing underneath it. There's like a foot under, like when I looked down, there's a foot till you.
Could
get
you tell,
there.
was there water in there?
I didn't see water. I was in the car,
I'll
but
grab my
like,
flashlight.
yeah. So, but now he's like, that's not a pothole, that's a sinkhole, which means it could
We
go
definitely
really
don't want
quick.
that.
Yeah.
Let me,
So, we certainly don't want.
no, I will, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Yeah, I might just.
Is Allison on vacation?
You know what, she
Or
bought
just
the
a-
house,
Yeah.
and then she had a friend from Dallas or
Somewhere
something.
in town.
What ends up happening is I end up going, this time of year, I let everybody comp time because we're doing events.
Yeah.
Plus, we're just, it's summer.
Yeah.
So, she needed a break, and then
Yep.
her friend was coming in, and then she was gonna cover for me at ProStack. But then we got the presentation.
So now you're like, well, you're
Yeah.
doing this anyways.
All right, I'm gonna follow you.
Yep. Okay.
Getting these? Yeah, they're all set. I think I saw Martin.
Yeah, Martin left.